On December 1st of 2007, we were leaving a swim meet. Instead of turning left, we turned right. Whole life changed. Being fit at that time when it happened played a big role in me still being here.
After surviving a devastating accident that led to over 45 surgeries, John found his purpose in helping others overcome life's toughest setbacks.
I'm dramatically a different person since the car accident. Like, people would tell me all the time, I can't believe how positive you are when I'm laying in the nursing home. I'm like,
If you are somebody who is looking to transform adversity into strength, then this is the podcast for you. John Ulsh, thank you for being here.
thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. Brittany, did you have anything that you wanted to add into that, or should we just get right into the story?
I think we should just get right into it.
All right, cool. I don't know the ins and outs of this story. I know the cliff notes, so I want you to fill us in as if for everybody who doesn't know who you are. So who is John Ulsh?
So I'm an accident survivor, and my whole family is. So on December 1st of 2007, we were leaving a swim meet down in outside of James Buchanan High School. We had just 1 o'clock in the afternoon on December 1. We decided that instead of driving back towards Chambersburg the way we came, we were going to go over to Mercersburg Academy because it was Christmas and there'll be decorations. And my kids are 8 and 4. So my daughter, Katie, was the one who had the swim meet. She's 8. And our son, James, who was 4 at the time, we persuaded him to come along to the swim meet because we would go get a Christmas tree when we were done. And he would sit through 2 or 3 hours of hot indoor swimming pools in order to go get a Christmas tree. So we went the opposite direction. So I always say, instead of turning left, we turn right. Whole life changed. About 15 minutes later, we were driving over towards Greencastle, Pennsylvania, over towards Interstate 81 to head back to Carlisle. And a car coming the other direction, crossed an undivided 55-mile highway. No skid marks on the road. He was distracted at the last second. We don't know from what, because unfortunately he did not survive. And the police estimated the impact speed at 125 miles an hour. So they estimate we were traveling at 55 and he was traveling at 70 and no skid marks. So they take the combined travel speeds and if you hit a telephone pole at 55, you hit a telephone pole at 55. Two objects moving in the opposite direction, they combine those speeds. So it was super high impact speed. Like I said, the other driver died instantly at the scene of the accident. I was unconscious. My wife was in the front passenger seat. Tanya was unconscious. Behind me was our son James sitting in a booster seat, and he was knocked unconscious. And then our daughter was in the back passenger side. She was the only one who was still conscious. We were in a pretty rural area with houses around it. And it just so happened that there was a gentleman who was pulling in to the house to visit his older mother. And he had pulled into the driveway and heard the collision, immediately dialed 911 and ran down to the car. When he got there, we learned this a little later. So the woman who lived in the house wrote my wife a letter. She didn't know if I survived, so it was addressed to her. And it arrived a few months after the accident. And it just stated that, her son was the one who called the ambulance, called 911, that when he got to the car, he found our daughter crawling between the front seats, crying, "Daddy, don't die." Which was it was super emotional, obviously. And again, we're reading this letter a few months after the car accident. Of course, we didn't know her whole story until, again, 8-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Didn't really want to talk about it much then. So I was the most injured. I mean, I went driver to driver. My son James was sitting behind me, was the second most injured. He ended up having the fibula and tibia in his left leg snapped It turned out that the lap belt ended up severing a small intestine, but not cutting a skin. Um, and ended up having to have a bowel reduction later that day. They didn't realize it right away. Um, my wife was broken hand, broken foot. Everybody had broken ribs, broken collarbones from the seatbelt. Getting thrown against that seatbelt at that speed. Airbags deployed, did all the things, but it was again that's such a split second thing because nobody's locking up the brakes, so nothing's locking up until the car hits the other car.
Mhm.
Um, so she was unconscious and injured, and like I said, then my daughter, most of her injuries were from the seatbelt. So she had a big cut across her stomach from the seatbelt, broken collarbone. When they had to smash the glass to cut everybody out, a lot of cuts and lacerations. So we were closer to University of Maryland's trauma hospital. We were almost in Hagerstown. We're right at the Pennsylvania border of 81. And so ambulances are called out. Immediately, they make a decision that my son and I have to go to trauma hospital. Like I said, University of Maryland's trauma hospital is closer. However, as we know, the Carlisle keeps a Penn State Lifeline helicopter stationed here. They keep one at in Hershey at the hospital, and they keep one in Carlisle, and
Mhm.
that was the closest transport. So um, they were called in. To this day, I wouldn't be here if that helicopter didn't sit in Carlisle. And it's there for that purpose to reach down into that part of Pennsylvania where there isn't, Chambersburg doesn't have a trauma hospital. There's nothing down that direction. So that helicopter came and picked up my son and I. My daughter and my wife were then flown to Hagerstown Hospital, which was the closest non-trauma hospital. Um, I arrived there in Hershey, basically bleeding to death. So I had a lot of injuries. Um, my pelvis was shattered. It was kind of always the doctor later would describe your pelvis as like a lifesaver. You can't break it in just one spot. You breaks in half. So the front of my pelvis was shattered. It was separated 8 inches apart.
Mm.
All the energy from the impact just came up my leg. And so it just came up, shattered my pelvis in the front, shattered it in the back, proceeded to break my tailbone and then my next four vertebrae in my back, all just got shattered into each other. Um, that was orthopedic. My foot, left foot, had got stuck under the engine block. I was wearing a pair of Crocs because it was a swim meet. The swim meet, it was like hot, swim it's in December. It's always hot in the swim meet inside there,
Yeah.
but then you're also cold outside. So the Crocs are great because you just take your socks off, put the Crocs back on, and you can be inside the pool. Those Crocs were stuck under the engine block. When they went back and looked at the car, they pulled my feet out of them. That engine block shattered my left foot, but none of that stuff was going to kill me. My spleen ruptured. Uh, my diaphragm ruptured, and when my diaphragm ruptured, my left lung completely collapsed. My right lung partially collapsed, and so I was functioning on half a lung. And then all of bunch of organs, my appendix, which I still had ruptured, all the collision stuff inside my body was bleeding, and that's what was going to kill me. Um,
I think I just want to add two things because I know your story.
yeah.
So one is people I think feel extra safe in their vehicles for one. Like you don't realize like what you said about the impact of two objects moving towards each other is a totally different impact than if your car hit a guardrail.
Mhm.
Secondly, when your car is moving 55 miles an hour, your organs are moving 55 miles an hour. And when your body stops like that, everything on your inside is also being jarred. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. My grandfather was a fireman. So these were things that I got to grow up with
Yeah.
to keep me safe when I was driving. But I remember you telling me about it was either a policeman or a fireman that came to your window and he was kind of talking you through you kind of woke up a little bit. And I remember what stood out to me in the story was you weren't even so much worried about yourself. You were worried about your family members in the car. And then you did ask him, am I going to die?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So, later on, I started to do a lot of public speaking. It just kind of started to snowball. It started as therapy for me. Like just to tell my story was therapeutic. This is therapeutic for me. Um, but I had talked in Hagerstown at a Hagerstown chamber event, like an annual meeting, and it made the Waynesboro newspaper and it made like the Greencastle newspaper. And it turned out that the chief of police in Greencastle was also an EMS, and he was on the ambulance. So he was actually with me while they were waiting for the lifeline to come get my son and I. And so he also didn't know I survived. He assumed I died. I mean, I was given less than a 3% chance to survive at the hospital. So the assumption by most people at the scene of the accident was that I didn't survive.
Yeah.
I mean, the other driver was pronounced dead there. So he saw it in the newspaper, and then he kind of tracked me down as a real estate agent at Hook and Eckman and found me, and called me. Um, and so he said he saw that I spoke. He saw I was speaking about my story. He couldn't believe I was alive. We met and had coffee, and yeah, he told me that I came in and out of consciousness while I was on the gurney waiting to be picked up by lifeline. I have no memory. Last thing I remember is seeing Whitetail ski area. They were blowing snow, which is right the area where we were, and having a conversation about the kids going skiing. It's the last thing I remember. I don't remember the car. I don't coming over. I don't remember any of it. I don't remember it until I came out of my coma, anything. So, but he said I was conscious, and yeah, he said I just kept asking if my family was okay. Um, and then I asked him, I said, "Am I going to die?" Which is interesting because I don't. My personality wouldn't allow me normally to ask that kind of question. But I guess when you're in that condition, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's I really, I have no memory till I got to the hospital. I do. I take that back. I've written about some out of body experiences during that. I remembered being in the lifeline with James, but in my experience, I was holding James. Again, we're
Oh
both
wow.
we're
Isn't that
both strapped to
interesting?
gurneys. James's memory of it, again, he's a 4-year-old boy. He said they put us in the butt. He said they put us in the butt of the helicopter because the back drops and that's where they
Right.
enter. So, you
Yeah.
always think helicopter, they slide the doors on the side and everybody goes inside, but apparently, that was his memory of it. But yeah, I have this memory of us flying in the helicopter, but I'm talking to James and I'm holding James, and obviously I wasn't talking, I was unconscious, and I definitely wasn't holding my son in a helicopter when we were both strapped to gurney. So I have some of those kind of weird experiences during my time in a coma. But when I arrived at the hospital, I got there at like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There was an ER shift coming up. Um, my wife and my doctors, everybody told me that the shift that was there just stayed, and the second shift came in, and they all worked on me. And again, I was bleeding to death at the time, right?
Yeah.
Nobody was really concerned about my pelvis, they were concerned about my back being broken. They were trying to stop this internal bleeding that was going on. That first 12 hours, I took 30 units of blood. So I'm a 200-pound guy. I probably hold 8 units of blood in my body.
So
So
they were just pumping new blood
yeah,
through you
yeah.
as you were
I
bleeding
was
it
just
out the
bleeding
whole
out. They were
time.
putting new. Um, and so I'm O positive, which I didn't know until then, which is the universal donor, but I can only take O positive blood. I was wiping out their O positive blood supply,
Oh my
Wow.
goodness.
um, at the hospital. And
So you were on the clock. Time
yeah,
was ticking.
yeah. And like I said, they had a shift change. Those next set of surgeons all stayed in the ER. The nurses all stayed, and um, you know, for that first, 24 hours, a real touch and go. And that first 8 to 10, they just basically cut me open from sternum to the pelvis, and they were just trying to deal with anything that was bleeding, trying to, again, I had to reinflate my lungs.
Hmm.
One of the things that you and I have talked about before is I was a marathon runner when this happened and saved my life. I mean, I'd put in 10 miles that morning at like 6 in the morning, because I've functioned for the whole entire time from the accident happened until they got me to the hospital with half a lung.
What did they tell you that? Like the
Yeah,
fact that you were physically fit and that your lungs were healthy and exercised,
yeah,
that
and I
if
was
they weren't, you wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, I was probably, at that time, 12% body fat. And so they didn't have to, I mean, again, I'm cut from here to here the whole way down. They just had opened me up. If I was carrying, you know, 25, 30% body fat or more, they would have had to work through all that just to find where all the bleeding was going on. So yeah, it was, I mean, on two levels, being, fit at that time when it happened, played a big role in me still being here. And, the one being the ability to lose a left lung completely
Yeah.
and still be able to breathe enough to stay alive. And two, when they had to go look for all this internal bleeding, there wasn't this whole layer of body fat that they had to work through in order to, find all this bleeding. Sad part of the story, which turned out to be happy, was so my wife, Tanya, and our daughter, Katie, were in Hagerstown at the hospital. And so it was determined between the hospitals and my parents and my brother-in-law, Tanya's brother, that they were going to transport Tanya and Katie via ambulance from Hagerstown up to Hershey Hospital so that she could be by my side because I was going to die.
Mm.
So they had to tell her I wasn't going to survive, and they were going to try to get her up there before I died to see me. She, again, broken hand, broken foot, broken ribs. She's in a lot of pain. She's on a lot of pain medicine. They strapped both of them into a gurney.
But she had a much better chance of survival. She
Oh,
was so into
yeah.
surviving,
She was fine. She was conscious by this
and
point. Yeah,
in the medical field, you given a 3% chance was as good as zero.
yeah, yeah.
So they were
So
like, we have to get them together.
yeah, so they wanted to be able to transfer for her up there. So again, she's still in a lot of pain. They're still gonna have to, still, I don't know what it is, an hour and a half, 2 hour drive from Hagerstown up to Hershey. And they would have had to, again, to strapped her into the gurneys to put them in ambulances, and she and my daughter, and then drove them up. When they got to Hershey, they admitted Tanya into the hospital. So James is already in surgery. James had his leg set and was back into his room. My parents had driven to Hershey, and Tanya's brother had went down to Hagerstown, where Tanya and Katie were. And uh, James had already had his leg set. He was like a little 4-year-old boy, had a cast up to his groin to his. I think his cast probably weighed more than he did at the time. And they had him in a room, and my mom was there, and he started throwing up, and so she called a nurse in, and they ended up scanning his stomach and realizing that literally his bowel was severed, but it never cut his skin. The seatbelt never cut his skin. So it literally cut his, again, being a little kid, it was enough to cut his bowel, but not enough to cut his skin. So
Yeah.
he was going septic. He was
Oh
basically
my
leaking his
gosh.
bowel. So they had to then rush him into surgery as Tanya's arriving and getting admitted into the hospital, realizing that they're, now going to go in and fortunately for him, he ended up not having to have a temporary colostomy put in. They were able to remove the section of his bowel and reattach it then. Again, probably because being young,
Mhm.
because later on that would happen to my wife from the seatbelt, and they weren't she had to get a temporary colostomy put in because of not wanting to reconnect, but he got reconnected immediately. So he has the little matching scar to my big scar because I had to, cut him open and reattach his bowel.
Yeah.
When they showed up at the hospital, Tanya and Katie, they would have had to put Katie into the kids' wing of the hospital where James was. She was conscious and scared, and she did not want to go. So through some negotiation, it was determined that Katie wouldn't be admitted, just Tanya would, and that Katie would stay in Tanya's room at the hospital with her. And then my dad stayed in that room, and my mom stayed in with James. But yeah, so Katie, when she got to her, she never got readmitted back into the hospital. Tanya did, and Tanya spent the next 5 days admitted in the hospital. While the whole time I'm still in a coma. James is recovering from his surgery. James spent 15 days in the hospital. Um, like I said, the first few hours were real touch and go for me. So it was just trying to stop the bleeding. They left my chest cavity open for about 2 days, just trying to keep going back in and finding more spots where I'm still bleeding because I'm still losing blood. Um, at the end of that time, the risk of just leaving my body cavity open
Yeah.
was pretty high. So they decided they were going to have to close me up. Well, I had so swollen from, one, all the blood products, one, all the other medications. They couldn't pull my abdominal muscles shut. So it was just, so they just pulled like the top layer, my fascia skin, the top layer of my skin just
Just
across and just stitched it up with like the old blue sutures that, you would hear your grandfather talk about from an open heart surgery. Like there was no plastic surgeon in there making a nice clean line. James got a nice clean line after his surgery. Plastic surgeon made that look real nice. Um, but yeah, they just stitched me shut and assumed that if I still survived, they would have to go in later and reattach my abdominal muscles because
wow. So they
they
just kind of used your skin as like a loose
yeah,
band-aid
yeah,
and you
Yeah.
were completely open
yeah. From,
and
from,
they
from my
just went,
sternum all the way down to my pelvis, I was cut open.
goodness.
No belly button. They took my belly button out. Funny story. I told my mom they took away the last connection that they had. But yeah, so they just cut me right down where your belly button was. And so I just said I was open. So they um sewed me shut and then over the next, 13 days, they went in and they repaired my pelvis. So the first thing they did is my pelvis was 8 inches separated. The left side of it was 8 inches higher. So before they could even put it any titanium in to put it back together, they put a rod in my knee and hung a weight off of it and allowed my leg to hang off the end of the gurney I was in, and basically over a 2-day period of time pulled my the pelvis back down.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
So yeah, so that's how they put 'em, and then they put a titanium plate with 6 screws across the front and then 2 8-inch screws, again, like lifesavers story, if you look at your pelvis, there's that curve. It snapped in the back too. So that, they put that together with screws.
So during all of this, I mean, to see you like that would almost be traumatic for any of your family members. Were
Yeah,
they even letting anybody come see you?
yeah, yeah. So what's crazy is, like I said, I was, running at about 180 pounds. I'm 6'2", so, still heavy relative, but it was just big frame. And, when I was so I spent 18 days in coma. A lot of it was induced because of all the surgeries they had. I was on a ventilator. I couldn't breathe on my own because of the lungs.
Hmm.
And so, when they were trying to get me off the ventilator at like day 18, the bed that I was in could weigh you to, give some certain amount of vital information to doctors. Uh, Tanya told me that I weighed 260 pounds. That's why they couldn't pull my abdominal muscles. I was just
That
so
swelling.
all the swelling. Yeah. And then all the plop, all the blood products and all the stuff they were putting in me was causing a lot of inflammation and swelling as well. Again, 18 days, I'm only, sustainable substance I'm getting is IV driven stuff. And again, they're keeping me in a induced coma, which is also a ton of fluid and medications going into my body to keep me unconscious. So yeah, so I was like 180 to 260 and just fluid. And it certainly wasn't food because I went, 18
Yeah.
days with not eating at all. So when they first tried to get me off of the ventilator, it was like day 16. So I said our son was in the hospital for 15 days. So Tanya got discharged after 5. Tanya and my parents just went across the street and stayed at a hotel. Tanya's hand was broken, foot was broken. She couldn't drive a car. They all wanted to be close. I mean, Carlisle to Hershey is 45, 50 minutes with no traffic. So they all wanted to be close to the hospital. Um, Day 15 is when our son James went home. Um, Katie was already at home. We were fortunate that we had an au pair with our family who had been with us for 2 years from Germany, and Katie was really comfortable with her, and so Katie was back in school while I was still in a coma.
Wow.
Wow.
Again, trying to get some normality for an 8-year-old, right?
And maybe distraction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and having her friend group, and
Right.
so she was spent a lot of time with her friends, and a lot of the parents of her friends were taking her after school and doing, because Tiny was over with James and with me in a coma, and again, unable to drive a car herself, she was always at the mercy of somebody else to get her to the hospital. So day 15, James goes back home. James is in a cast up to his groin, broken collarbone, and this big incision across his stomach where they fixed his bowel. So he had to go home in a wheelchair because he couldn't use crutches. And like I said, the cast, there's pictures of him. The cast had a way more than he did. I mean, it was, here you got a 4-year-old boy who's learning to
Right.
use the bathroom, and now all of a sudden he can't even stand. He can't stand. He can't do anything. He's supposed to not use his arm, but because it's in a sling. But of course, you
Yeah.
tell a
It's true.
4-year,
Yeah.
any
4-year-old
4-year-old,
boy to
anybody,
sit.
just tell a 4-year-old. You had 4-year-old girls at one point. Yeah, they're not going to do anything too long without forgetting that they're not supposed to use their arm. So Tanya went back with them to move him home to get everybody settled in. I'm still in a coma, so now she's using family and friends to drive her back and forth to the hospital to check in on me and get updates from doctors and again they're trying to determine whether they can take me out of this induced coma if I'm going to breathe on my own. Um, day 17 they try to take me off of the ventilator and I can't breathe on my own, so they have to put the ventilator back in. Um, day 18 they try again and I start to breathe on my own and they start weighing me off the medications that are keeping me in the induced coma. And so they call Tanya and they tell her I'm conscious. She's back in Carlisle at our house with the kids. And so my best friend at the time, um, who has been helping a ton with, I mean, their kids are our god kids. Our kids grew up together, and he's like, I'll get you to the hospital. So my buddy John gets Tanya in a car because she can't drive, drives to the hospital, uh, gets her up to my room. Now I have no memory of this. This is the story that I get from John later. So I'm in the bed and my nurse is with me. I have this great memory of this male nurse. I never found out who he was, but all I remember is he had red hair and a red beard. And so I just always call him the red beard nurse in my story when I talk about him.
Yeah.
But he says, do you know who that is? And Tanya and John are standing in the door frame of my room. And I said, yeah, that's the bulldog. So I've been 18 days in a coma. I almost die. My wife is there by my side the entire time. When I do come out of a coma, she's at home dealing with our severely injured kids. She's severely injured. My best buddy drives her over there, and the first thing I say is, "Well, my wife's the bulldog." Which again, my buddy John thought. Oh, because the other part is nobody knew if I had brain trauma. Like until I was conscious, they
Oh,
had no
true.
idea. If
Yeah.
again, I had spinal damage. I was paralyzed from my waist down. I wasn't able to move my legs, which took me a couple of days to even realize in the hospital that I couldn't move my legs. But they had no idea whether I had any traumatic brain damage from the accident because I was unconscious the entire time.
And it would almost be assumed that you would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
With
I
everything
definitely
else you
had
sustained.
concussions and everything else,
Right.
and I did have this spinal injuries, and so John to say immediately that he knew that I was going to be okay. I had enough guts to call my wife the bulldog.
Is
After
that
it was dying.
something that she understood? Like,
Oh
was
yeah,
that,
she
or-
did. I think they all started laughing.
Okay.
Again.
And it was probably some comedic relief that,
Yeah.
like, honestly, everybody needed.
Yeah, I mean that's the way John always said it. It's like just like
If he was too sentimental,
Yeah.
everybody would have been worried.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
if Ben
like
would
that.
have
or if I
been
would
too
have said I
sentimental,
don't know
I'd
who
been
it
like,
is,
oh, crap.
I don't
Right.
recognize her. Again, because I just came out of the coma. I mean, so all the medication that they give you to keep you in the coma is now kind of all floating around in all that fluid in my body. And now my body's going to start to get rid of this fluid. Now, I'm on a catheter, but all of a sudden, as I'm now out of this coma and slowly I'm losing this fluid out of my body. So the first like 5 days, the most crazy hallucinations. Thought I was on the moon at one point. At one point, I was in a spacecraft staring back at Earth, trying to Okay, so we all know the joke about how often does the men think about the Roman Empire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You've heard that. There's this whole thing, like, and it's like crazy stat, right?
Yeah.
That I'm literally have a whole memory of me trying to figure out what period was the Roman Empire, when was Caesar. Like I write about it in my book. It's crazy. Like I literally have this whole period where I'm sitting in a spaceship contemplating the world and the rise and fall of the Roman Empire.
That is hilarious.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, not only do we think about it at least once a day as men, but
Yeah.
apparently in a near-death experience, it's the first place we go.
Your brain's doing all kind of funky stuff, and it goes back to that.
Yeah. I had this memory of being in a country club locker room, and Tiger Woods is there. This is before Tiger Woods had gotten himself in some marital problems at the time. He's a super popular guy. And for some reason, I'm stuck in a bed because I'm paralyzed, but he comes over to talk to me. Like, I remember being in like 7 different rooms. I was in 2 rooms. One of them had a thatch roof on it. I'm pretty sure I was never in a hospital room with a thatch roof.
Nope.
But yeah, I mean, again, I remember like being hooked up to containers of Gatorade and Gatorade going through my body to heal me. But it was.
That'd make a great Gatorade commercial.
Oh, it would be. I mean, hey, Gatorade, if you're listening.
Right.
But like all I can remember is like I'm in this collapsible like containers of Gatorade, and as my body's absorbing the Gatorade, that I'm sinking lower and lower in this pile of containers of Gatorade, and then there's like lines running around the ceilings that have Gatorade colors going through it that are going into my veins, and then the nurses keep throwing Gatorade out into the aisles of the hallway, like bedpans. I mean, every time I would close my eyes, all I would see is flashing skulls. I mean, again, all from most of that medication that they had in. But yeah, for 5 or 6 days.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard like the most horrific screaming this one day, and I kept telling the nurse, "What is going on? Why is it all this screaming?" It was me. I didn't even know it.
Just in your head.
Yeah, it's just
Oh my
screaming
God.
out
Oh,
loud.
you actually physically screaming.
I was actually screaming.
Wow.
I don't really, again, so drugged up and dealing with tons of pain medications to deal with, the injuries that I really was not. Like I said, it took me. I can remember the very first question I asked wasn't my fault. I remember asking the nurse,
Yeah.
and then asking my brother-in-law. I said, "Was it my fault?" By that point, there was a police report. It was determined he crossed us over onto my lane at the last second. I mean, it was determined it wasn't my fault, which was one of my biggest relief. And then a few days later, I realized I couldn't move my legs. I got me strapped to a bed, IVs. Again, I'm getting all my pain medications through IVs, and I'm in really bad shape. So I don't even realize for a couple of days that I can't move my legs.
Yeah. So at what point, like, okay, so you wake up from the coma and you have your brain's doing all this weird stuff, and you can't, it sounds to me like you can't decipher reality from fiction and what your brain's creating. Were there moments of consciousness in there where you kind of came to reality and realized the severity of the situation and where you were? And if so, like, what was going through your head during those moments?
Yeah, like I said, the biggest one was this need to understand. Well, first was to understand that my kids were okay, right? Mm-hmm. Then there was, this. I would meld reality with whatever was going on in my head at the same time. So so now I was starting to learn that James was already back at home, but in my mind, James was still at the hospital, and that he was recovering from, but he was going to be okay. But he had his surgery because of his bowel, and his surgery caused his leg. And I'm sure Tanya or my mom or dad or somebody's giving me this information. But I can remember distinctively laying in bed, being able to close my eyes and see James upstairs. And I would tell people, like, James is right above me. I can see him. He's okay. He's scared. I had a number of those types of experiences that are kind of crazy. While I was in a coma, where I remember walking around the hospital and turned out I was walking through a construction site, and it turned out there was a construction site there, but there was no way I would have ever seen it. I was laying flat on my back for what turned out to be 10 weeks, laying flat on my back. So it wasn't that I could see out a window or anything. So I had a few of these weird kind of out of
Like
body,
almost
out of,
incredibly accurate out of body
yeah, like
experiences.
where literally I kind of knew where I was and what was going on. And I was in a coma. But yeah, so like, I was on a lot of pain medication, obviously, and it's intravenous pain medication. So every day, my nurses or my nurse aides would ask me a question like, "Do you know where you are?" I'm in a hospital. What hospital you at? Harrisburg Hospital. No, it's not right. Then I started to realize what day it is. Then I started to realize that there was a dry erase board up on behind me that I couldn't always make out, and it had the day's date on it, and it had it said Penn State Hershey Hospital on it. Of course, all the nurses, doctors, all had it on their scrubs. So because every time I gave the wrong answer, they take down my pain medicine because they thought they were giving me too much because I was losing reality. So I started to figure out that if I didn't get the answers right, they were going to decrease my pain meds. So it became like, do you know where you are? I'm like, oh yeah, Penn State, Hershey. You know what day it is? Yeah, it's Wednesday. And then they're like,
just like, I'm nailing these answers. Give me more meds.
Yeah. And then they ask me, then they would ask me some question like, oh, so is it AM or PM? Again, I couldn't see out a window. I couldn't tell you. I could look at a clock and see it said 2, and I couldn't tell you if it was 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. I didn't know. And so I'd get, or they'd ask me some question like, oh, do you know where you are? Yeah, I'm at Penn State Hospital. You know where that is? Yeah, it's in New York City. And they're like, no, we're in Hershey. I'm like, oh shit. They're gonna back down my pain meds a little bit.
You're like, no.
Yeah. So I ended up spending, consciously, I ended up having like 4 more surgeries there. So part of the issue I was having with my lung is that it started to fill with fluid, the one that collapsed, my left one. Well, part of the putting my pelvis and my back together was I was not going to be allowed to be raised more than 4 degrees, like very, not very high at all, for 10 weeks. So I was going to have to lay flat. But now I have fluid in my lungs. And so normally, if they had to get fluid out of somebody's lungs, they have you kind of curl up in a ball, and they take a big long needle and they go right between your ribs and shove the needle in there and pull the fluid out. Well, they weren't going to be able to do that because I couldn't curl in a ball. I was non-weight bearing completely. So because everything was just, screwed back together with titanium.
Mush on the inside.
Yeah, it was all screwed back together with titanium, and that stuff wasn't going to hold until it started to heal. And so I can remember very distinctively them taking me to another room, rolling me on a side, and like having, again, it's a teaching hospital, so there's always other students around with your primary doctor for whatever. Like I had 7 specialists at that point because lots of things were damaged. So
Right.
And I can remember them saying, "Well, how are we going to do this?" And they're like, "We're just going to have to hold him up on his side and roll him on his side." And they're like, "I don't know if we can do that." And they're like, "Well, we don't have a choice." And they're like, "Well, is he going to stay conscious, or we're going to have to?" And this whole thing, and again, I'm hearing it all, and they're all around me. They're wearing masks and whatever. I'm still pretty out
You're
of
just
it.
like, I wish I got more questions right.
Yeah.
To get more meds for this.
Yeah. I'm like, this doesn't sound like it's going to be fun at all.
Yeah.
And I was in pretty bad pain. And so the doctor's like, "Okay, we're gonna, do this. You ready?" And I was like, "What choice?"
You're right.
You're
Like, I'm
asking
here.
me. He's like, "Here it goes," because they're all behind me because I'm rolled onto my side, so I can't see what's going on. And all of a sudden, I feel this needle shove right into my back, and I hear him go, "We didn't get it."
Oh,
So they go, "We're gonna have to do it again." So they pull it out, and again, this, in my mind, this needle's like 12 inches long at least. It was a long needle, I'm sure. So the second time they do it, they get it, and now they have this. They're pulling it out, right? They ended up filling like the size of a water bottle full of the fluid that was inside my lung. But as soon as they pulled that syringe out, the first one, I was like, I could breathe. It was. I mean, again, my lung, it was so full of this fluid, it was making it really hard for me to breathe. That's what they were most concerned about. And
What did it feel like taking that first breath?
yeah, it literally was like a draw in of air. Like
Yeah.
it was like, again, I have no memory from my lung collapsing or all that. I'm sure I was struggling to breathe then, but in this case, I distinctly remember you know, the amount of air I could take in the moment they just, like the relief of it, wasn't fun. They also had to make sure my bladder wasn't torn and ruptured. Again, they didn't care at the time before they wanted to take my catheter out, that I didn't have a whole bunch of damage. So I had to make sure that, you know, everything was working there. I hadn't been introduced to any food. So at this point, I'm like 150 pounds. You know, I'm in the hospital for like 28 days, 27 days at this point, and I'm just haven't had food. You know, I'm just wasting away all that fluids out of my system. And so, you know, it was a lot to determine like what's going to happen next, because, you know, I couldn't go to rehab. Like the next step would be like go to rehab, right? Learn to use your legs again. I'm still can't use my legs. They were pretty sure that once the swelling of my spine would go down, that I would start to get more use of my legs, particularly my right leg. My left leg was the one that was damaged the most because all that energy came up the left side when it shattered everything.
Yeah.
And but it was like you can't go to rehab. So Tanya's at home with, you know, the kids. She's injured. James is injured. It's now almost Christmas. It's like 24th of December. And they're like, you know, you're not going to die at this point, or at least not. You know, we're through that. You're out of intensive.
They thought they had you at least stabilized.
Stable. Yeah. You're gonna. Yeah. Dude, I had a long road ahead of me, but I was out of intensive care at this point. And so it was like, where are you going to go next? And so we basically was determined between my parents and from the doctors that they were going to say, well, we're going to send you home. But Time's like, I can't manage him at home. They'd have to send me a hospital bed at home because like non-weight bearing. They have to have a transport to get me anywhere I'm going to go. Tanya's dealing with 2 kids. We have no first floor master bedroom, so we would have to put a bed in the family room. We have a sunken family room. I mean, there was literally nothing about this that made sense, and so there was a little bit of pushback, and so our insurance agreed, and it was determined I would go live in a nursing home.
Go hang out with all the old folks.
So so you know, now all of a sudden, everybody on my team, and it was a team, between my wife, my mother ran nursing homes before she retired. So my dad is an attorney who also did a lot of stuff related to nursing homes, related to estates, related. So I had great advocates. I mean,
Yeah.
I was very fortunate to have my parents and Tanya's brother. Like the team that I had was certainly pushing all the time for the very best care that they could find. So it was all this thought about where I would go, and they were looking at Philadelphia and looking down to Lancaster, because again, I wasn't going to rehab. I needed to go someplace before I could go to rehab. And finally I said, look, I just like to be back in Carlisle. I don't want everybody from Carlisle to have to drive back and forth. I'm just going to be in a nursing home. I'm going to wait out 10 weeks of this before I can get cleared to go to start rehab. And so it's almost Christmas. And, you know, it's like the day before Christmas. And so I end up in Manor Care Nursing Home directly across the street from where now our Keller Williams office is.
Right.
At the time, our office wasn't there. It was still downtown. But I end up in that nursing home in their rehab wing. Everybody is either a nursing patient or on the rehab wing. They're generally elderly people who had a hip replacement or a knee replacement, can't go back into the regular care nursing, can't go home. And so they're there to rehab. I'm there to lay on my back. And we move in on Christmas Eve.
Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah. So we have Christmas. The next day, I'm taking my narcotics via oral and no longer having IVs when I leave there. Bed sores is a huge issue for people who can't move. So I have this special air mattress which I had in the hospital, but they had to get me a special one there because most people in the rehab are there to get up and move, not get up and lay there.
Right.
And so I have this, I have all this stuff that's getting set up. Of course, the staffing, it's Christmas. The staffing is made up of the lowest people on the totem pole who have to work holidays, right? The administrator's not there, So my mother's like, well, we need rails on the sides of of this bed. And they're like, well, we're not allowed to put rails on the sides of beds. It restrains patients in nursing homes. You can't restrain patients. You're not allowed to. My mom's like, I run 18 nursing homes. You can, and here's the code, and here's how you can. And, about 6 hours later, I had maintenance putting rails on the sides of my bed, because the only way I could do anything was to hold a rail and have somebody roll me, like change the sheets or anything. Like they couldn't change the sheets in the bed I couldn't get out of bed to change them.
Yeah.
I couldn't, you want to learn humility really fast. Be 36 years old, paralyzed, and can't feed yourself, can't get up to the bathroom. Sponge baths are way overrated. They're not as good as they sound. So it was, I mean, I couldn't brush my teeth. And so that's incredible pain, and not really being able to process a ton. Again, the narcotics were strong that I was taking. I can remember having like a TV on, and like my comprehension of anything was super short, because now you're stuck in the bed. I was there for 10 weeks. So, a lot of people came to see me. A lot of our friends came to see me. A lot of people that are still really important to me from the old Hook and Ekman days were there routinely all the time, visiting me. A lot of friends. Unfortunately, I couldn't. Sometimes I'd fall asleep if you were talking to me. Like, my sleep was very sporadic because I was in constant pain, and I only got sleep when the pain meds were working.
Yeah.
My comprehension of anything was still really bad. I know, Brittany, you're a huge book person. People would give me books and books and books, and I could barely get. The best I could do is read short motivational stuff, like quotes, because my comprehension was terrible. I could have read something and read a paragraph and not been able to tell you one word that I just read about.
Yeah.
But I know at one point you were able to read.
Later,
And you read The Happiness Advantage.
I read The Happiness Advantage much later in life.
Okay, so much later that was given to you.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But unfortunately, he had not written that yet, and audio wasn't a big thing. So, like, my dad, again, thinking he was helping me out, gave me a Sony DVD player, like the little screen Sony DVD players. Okay?
Yes.
This is, again, 17 years ago. So, and like 3 series of The Sopranos.
Oh my gosh.
that I was going to have in my room. Again, I had seen the series, but I couldn't get through them. All I could ever watch is the show The Dirty Jobs, which was on repeat all the time on the
with
TV.
Mike Rowe.
Yeah, with Mike Rowe. Again, Mike, if you're listening, your show saved me when I was stuck in that was literally on repeat, because it was huge at that time, I think. And it was just one of those where like episodes were on all the time. So it was on in the middle of the night. It was on whenever, and the TV was just on with it on in the background. But yeah, so I got stuck there in the nursing home with, Tanya coming to spend as much time as she could. So my wife and her family are in the jewelry industry. Our accident happened December 1st. We all think we're irreplaceable probably in our jobs, particularly the higher up you get at your job. But I think she found out really quickly that you didn't have to be there for Christmas. You always felt like you had to work 80 hours a week, but she was with her family, and she wasn't at the store at all. And her brother was handling things, and other people were stepping up and obviously covering things. But this, like, her schedule consisted of get the kids off to school. The kids went to St. Pat's at that time. They were both in school. For preschool for James and for Katie, she was 3rd grade. And so then come to me at the nursing home. I was doing in-bed rehab, where they would use like a slide board and try to get me to move my legs. I couldn't move my legs yet. And spend the whole day with me until 6 o'clock. And then her goal was to go home and have dinner every night with the kids and put the kids to bed. So the kids had some sense of normality. We've always been a family who tries to eat dinner together as often as we can, even with crazy sports schedules later. And so it was always important that she wanted to be there for dinner, and she wanted to be there when 8 o'clock to get the kids to bed. And then she wouldn't come back. And then she'd be back the next morning and kind of repeat that schedule. So a lot of times, I wasn't sleeping. And when you're in the hospital, they bug you. Take your vitals every couple hours. You never sleep there because there's stuff going on in the halls. Everything's going on. I was in the rehab wing or nursing home. I would see the shift change nurse at 11, and no one else is coming till 6 a.m. unless I'm hitting the buzzer. So super lonely, super scared then. I mean, again, I always say, we always say kids, always scared at nighttime with the boogeyman and all those things. So are adults. I mean, reality is our brains do stupid things at night when we're not sleeping. All the stuff that we think is the worst thing in the world in the middle of the night. You wake up the next morning, you're like, why did I lose 2 hours of sleep last night worrying about something so simple? Now I'm stuck in a hospital. I'm paralyzed. I'm scared. I'm never going to walk. I have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, I know for a fact that I'm definitely not my same person, and nobody's treating me the same. Like,
Yeah.
like everyone's on pins and needles and not exactly sure what to say to me, which, we all been there. Like we all been on the other side where something terrible happens to somebody we know. They lose somebody or something. Like, you're like, what do I tell
Yeah,
this
you
person?
don't even know what to say or do.
Yeah. I quickly found out the answer. You don't have to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I've been on the other side. Like, you don't have to say anything. Just say, I'm here. I don't know. It's terrible. I'm here to support you any way I can. And I don't have any great words to tell you that's going to make this all feel better. And that's fine.
It's the time.
Yeah.
Presence.
Just being there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The gift of time and the support.
I can throw Andrew Cronenberg under the bus right now.
I don't know if you should. I know these stories.
I'm going to throw him under the bus. First of all, Amy wasn't there, and Amy will laugh. I think I probably have told us.
As long as it's pre-Amy.
Yeah,
then I guess
it's
okay.
100% an Andrew story. So Andrew Cronenberg's a few years. He's a realtor with us at Hook and Ekman at the time, and my little brother. He acts like my brother. My brother's name is Andrew. They're very similar personalities. And so he knew that that Tanya wasn't going to be there in the evenings, and I'm sure that he and Tanya communicated about it. And so he just took it upon himself that he was going to come visit me at 11 o'clock at night. So he would pound on the door at the nursing home, which was closed, convince the charge nurse at the desk that he was my brother, and that he would then come in, almost always after being out for the evening at the bars. He was going through a breakup of a girl. And so he would come in. I'm paralyzed. I can't get away from the guy, right? He'd come and sit
You're
next
just
to
stuck.
me. Come and sit next to me. The nurses would just let him in there with me. I mean, after he did it like twice, they just let him in. It didn't even become an issue. He'd reach in his pocket and pull out a beer and just sit there and just talk. Yeah. And I'd be like, dude, I can't get away. I'm trapped.
Could you communicate back to him at this point?
Yeah, and I guarantee I fell asleep. Like, I never remember him ever leaving. I remember him showing up. So he would stay till I fell asleep. And I don't know how long, again, based off when I get my meds, they were 4 hours. So, I'd get the meds and I'd have like 2.5 of good pain management. And then the rest was waiting to get my meds. So, he would come in there and just spend, 3 hours from 11 till 1 or 2 in the morning. And
You were
Such
just
a good
hostage.
supportive friend, Andrew.
he is a good supportive friend. But he would tell me all his heartbreak stories, and I would always tell him, like, I can't get away, right?
Yeah.
So your mentality is you feel lonely, your life has changed, and then Andrew comes in and graces you with more depressing, sad stories.
No, actually, I enjoyed it because, as we all know, this it's always Andrew's very happily married with an incredible family. But back when I first met him, he had a hard time keeping girlfriends, and mostly he was the problem. Yeah. This one got rid of him. So I actually thought it was hilarious because now he's heartbroken instead of breaking somebody's heart. So it was
Taste of his own medicine.
Yeah. And of course, like I said, I can't go anywhere. And so we'd have these evenings, and
you just had Andrew come in and tell you some bedtime stories.
Oh, yeah.
You were a hostage in his brain for a little while.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So what's crazy is they came up with this plan that they were going to build this turtle shell for my body so that I could be raised before I could go to rehab. And so Tanya's, my parents, other people are doing all this decision-making stuff. I'm not involved in the decision-making of any of this stuff. And so they build this literal molded 2-part shell that looks like a stormtrooper. Like it look like, again, remember I have no abdominal muscles. So now I've got this big, like swollen abdomen area. And so they come in and they mold this 2-piece shell that then they can roll me over, slide this back piece on, slap on the front like a, like a knight in armor, right? But made out of plastic that's white, and strap these Velcro straps against it. And now it's holding my entire spine and my back. So I still can't put weight on my pelvis, but this was not going to allow me to, before they wouldn't allow me to sit up. Like I couldn't sit up at all. So this thing that they design, and this is in January, towards the end of January. So it's been almost 2 months since the car accident. And they fit this thing. And the first time that I'm allowed to sit up, again, I'm not even in a mechanical bed at that point. I'm in like a manual one because there was no reason to have a bed that allows my bed to go up and down, right? So they go and they pull my bed up, and I pass out, just passed out. Just because I had literally spent at that point, I don't know, almost 7 weeks total. So it's like 14 weeks. So I go to rehab. So it's like 7 weeks in, 8 weeks in, and I just, all the blood runs from my head, and I just pass out.
Oh my gosh.
And so now now they're like, okay, well, now we're going to start setting you up longer. And the pain of sitting on my tailbone was shattered too. So if you ever busted your tailbone, that's like the worst. You know, it's hard to sit. And so we go through this like every day for 2 or 3 times a day, where they just practice setting me up. And, some days just getting me into this brace is exhausting. That it just like, let me lay here for a minute before you set me up, because you just rolled me and tried to get me into this brace. Yeah. And slowly over the next like 2 more weeks, we get to the point where they can set me up, and then they can start to put me in a wheelchair. Non-weight bearing, I can't put any weight down, but with this shell on now, I'm allowed to sit up. So instead of spending, a total of 14 weeks laying on my back, I've spent 8 weeks, and then we slowly start transitioning to using me in a wheelchair. With like, they use these things called plastic slide boards. They level the bed to the wheelchair, and they set you up and they slide you in, and then it's this whole thing of how long can you stay in the wheelchair? Because again, my back is shattered, everything's shattered. So now they're like, oh, well, you're in. Now we need to leave enough time to get you out, because we're going to exhaust you getting you out. So it starts with like, I spend 5 minutes in there. And slowly they start to be able to get me into a wheelchair long enough to move me down a hallway. Like, then I get to leave my room. I get to go.
You get to explore.
Yeah, well, I get to go into like the physical therapy room, and the whole time I'm in there, the kids are coming for Christmas. They come to visit me. They're always like super like sensitive about, don't hurt daddy. They want to come up and hug me, but they all know I'm busted up. Drives me nuts, because I'm like, just come hug me. They're like 8 and 4. Like,
Yeah, you want to hold your kids.
Yeah, and I don't want them scared of me.
Yeah.
And so, when I'm finally starting to get into this wheelchair, they have to, it's carpeted hallway. I can't move my wheelchair myself. I'm not strong enough. I'm too weak. And here my 8 and 4-year-olds pushing me in a wheelchair. And I'm like, I am not going to do this the rest of my life. There's 0 chance that I can handle having my kids pushing around in a wheelchair. And so I get the therapist to tie rubber straps to my like exercise straps to my arms of my bed, and I just become obsessed with like, I think, if I'm never going to walk again, I'm going to be so freaking strong upper body that I can move my own wheelchair. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a wheelchair racer, and I'm like, I'm just creating this whole scenario. So I'm literally in there doing like, exercise straps all the time, pulling on my arms.
So that was the moment for you, because I wanted to ask you this question. Like, at what point did the Rocky Balboa music start playing in your head? And that was when your kids started pushing you in the wheelchair, and you were like, no, not happening.
Yeah.
And then that moment, it was da 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 da. You're tying straps to things. Is that the moment that shifted your entire mentality to? Because hearing your story and looking at you now, knowing what you've been through, like, you're a ripped up. How old are you?
53.
You're a ripped up 53-year-old man that, looking at you, does not look like you had even an inkling of this stuff happen to you that we've just discussed. Like it's incredible to see what I'm looking at right now and knowing your past. And that moment is what did it. Like without that moment, like do you think that is would it have happened later, or was it just like this undeniable like my kids are pushing me in a wheelchair. This is
Yeah, there was two of them. The first was this whole wheelchair thing, and they were taking me down to rehab. And so again, I can't do. So my cardio is what they call a hand bike. So they put you in my wheelchair in front on a table like this, and it's a hand. It's like a bicycle pedals, but it's for hands, hand bike. So that's your cardio actually, because you can't use your legs. Yeah. And then I would have them wheel this wheelchair twice a day and stick me. They had cable machines, and they would stick me in, and I would sit there and do fly cables and tricep push downs and curls with those cable machines as much as they would let me.
Yeah. Like, so anything that you could do, you were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. To the point where, like, again, woman by the name of Carrie Gabelius, whose husband, Jeff Gabelius, is a pastor at Second Pres in Carlisle. I helped them buy the house when they came. And Carrie lived right down the street, the house I sold her. And she would be there with her little boys when they were in school, or they weren't school age yet, and would be there every day. And she'd just come while I was in rehab and just sit there and watch me do all this stuff. So again, I always said these things, but like the moment was just this whole idea that at that point I was kind of convinced I wasn't going to walk, and I was kind of convinced I was going to be in a wheelchair. And if I was going to be in a wheelchair, I was going to be like a wheelchair athlete. Like I'm just not, like I'm a runner. Like this is what I do. Ran in college. I mean, I'm not going to let this wheelchair thing be the end, and I'm certainly not going to have my kids push me around in it. Like to this day, I say there's two things I never want to happen again and go back to. One was I don't want to get dementia. The thought of that scares me to death because I went through a period where I can remember anything. Like that idea scares me, and I never want to go back in a wheelchair. Never. Those two things that would set me back a lot, to have to deal with either one of those types of things, losing my memories or being able to back in a wheelchair. And just, again, it was just one of those things that really struck me as like, I can't be in this wheelchair. And so it became sort of this driving factor for the next 4 or 5 weeks before I can go to rehab. So one of the huge, it's my story, but one of the huge advantages of being able to get in this wheelchair is they can move me down to the shower room on the other end where the rehab facility is, and I can have a shower. This is like now 10 weeks. I haven't had a shower. I've been sponge bathed, lots of cleanup. Didn't have a haircut. Ironically, I never had a beard. I grew a beard in a coma, and I've never shaven it off. My kids to this day are like, they're adults, and they're like, don't shave off your beard. Like I literally grew a beard in a coma in 18 days. The guy with the chin strap beard, they had trimmed it up, and because I had a ventilator, so they were like trying to keep it from sticking into my mustache. Like, I don't even think I could grow a beard back then, and I certainly never had the patience to keep trying. And yeah, so I literally, ironically, I grew a beard. And
I have it now.
I have a beard. I'm keeping this thing. It's my new mat. Everyone just thinks I had scars from the accident. I'm like, no, it's just it might be psychological. It might be a mask a little bit for me. Yeah. But yeah. So I grow this beard. So they take me. I've had people trim my beard while I'm laying in a hospital bed. Some of my again funny again. I don't want to everything, but some of my wife's friends would come in. I'm like, hey, I need to trim my beard. They're like, I've never shaven a man's face. I'm like, there you go. It's
Today's
practice time. Practice time.
Yeah.
But they were able to take me down for a shower, like into a shower stall. So they come up with, and this had some great nurses' aides there too. I mean, I can say my experience there was very good. Now I'm unique. I am 30 years younger than probably the next patient. And I wasn't in the shape I am now, but I wasn't in bad shape. So I feel like I probably was the best one that they had to go visit every day to get out of bed or feed or do whatever. Plus, I wanted to go to rehab. When I could start going down the hall, and the rehab person came in, like they would come in and get me up at 6 because the 3 or 4 other people they had to go to were going to fight them and not want to, cooperate. And I was like,
Isn't that interesting too? Like, it's because you lost the ability. So you had a stronger desire to get it back. Whereas others, they kind of have lost the ability. Obviously, they're in a rehab, but like not to the extreme you did. So it's almost like your level of humbleness and gratitude maybe helped fire that determination, if you will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, again, to me, I just appreciated that what they were there. They were there to help me. They were going to, you know, I wasn't going to fight with them. I wasn't going to push back. I at no point other than some periods of time where I felt really scared or felt really alone. There were periods of time in the first 8 weeks I wish I would have just died. It was just the pain was excruciating, but there was never this lack of gratitude that I was alive. That I was able to see my kids and my wife and my parents and my kids and didn't have to go through the loss of me. I mean, I'm religious. So I didn't think me dying wasn't going to hurt me. uh, you know,
Yeah.
Everybody who gets left behind are the ones who suffer, right? So I was grateful that at the very least, I didn't know what my quality of life was going to be, but I knew that at the very least I was going to be here for a period of time.
Yeah, and I want to ask you real quick about your values. Your values prior to the accident, you were very health and fitness driven. You ran all the time. You loved being there for your family. Do you think if you hadn't had those values and maybe you were just kind of like, let me go to work, clock in, clock out, eat like crap, let me not, I'm not working out. Like, do you think that would have led you to give up? Like the values that you had prior
Yeah.
seemed like they carried you through. Like you never lost that. You always had this previous life that you loved and you were fit and you wanted to get back to that so bad. Like losing that was too much and you were like, no.
So one of the big things that I would often tell people is, we're in our late 30s, my wife and I. Our kids are 8 and 4. They're doing well. We're financially doing well. We're finally starting to see a lot of the hard work and putting in long hours. I'd only been a realtor about a year when the car accident happened. Prior to that, I worked with my wife in the jewelry industry. And part of the reason that I got out was we decided we both can't stay because our travel schedules, our work schedules, our busiest times of year were all corresponding. And now all of a sudden our daughter has a piano recital and we're both in Las Vegas for a jewelry show. It's like it was getting to the point where we needed to get some balance for the family.
Mm-hmm.
But our friend group was awesome. We were running races together. The wives were, we were taking family vacations. Like everything was at the top of like what you would picture saying, successful late 30s, which should look like as a family, right? Like we were hitting everything on stride. And then literally in a second, it was all flipped upside down. Like I always tell people, like, it's not like I am, I've been fortunate to meet a lot of soldiers who were injured overseas. A lot of the injuries that I'm still dealing with my lower body are very similar to, unfortunately, soldiers who get blown up. And so, I've met a lot of young men and women who have similar injuries. I wasn't me, and I wasn't a motocross, racer. I wasn't jumping out of an airplane for fun. I was doing nothing extreme. I was driving home from a swim meet, and 1 second a car crosses the center line.
Yeah.
I mean, the part when I talk to people that hits home is that could be you guys. There's, I know the age of your kids. You guys could just be going home from a Saturday event for one of your daughters, and nobody crossed the center line. It wasn't like you were out taking risk, right?
Right.
Everybody had their seatbelts on. Kids were in a booster seat. Like, we weren't doing anything risky. And just like that, our lives, like, literally turned upside down. You meet people who go through cancer or something that's sort of like they find out, and then there's this process, and then they have to start making life changes and decisions. And, it's sort of like this thought out process. There was no time to think. We didn't think. We just reacted. So I think, yes, a lot of where our work ethics were, and again the fact that I had this history of pushing my body, right? So, whether that was playing football, whether that was being I was a decathlon. You and I went to the same college. You were there a lot later than me, but so there was. But like I had this experience of and and you're a college athlete. You just you learn to push yourself a little farther. It's what's expected of you, and so having that background. Now you're looking at running like ultra distances. It's the same deal. Like I know some great ultra distance runners that I got to meet. It's just this determination that you're willing to push your body a little farther this time than you were last time.
Yeah, it's a little bit of zest for life and just valuing physical fitness and your ability to do things with your body.
Yeah,
And testing yourself, it sounds like, too.
Yeah.
Like to be able to keep pushing yourself when other people would give up.
Well,
You
it is,
say,
and it's a
can I
lot
do
of,
one more?
and a lot of it is like when again, it's very different. Like I always said, asking somebody to help you it's the same. Like it's both Tanya and I, but I think you have a little bit of this in you because you and I work with each other a lot. You can ask someone to do something and you feel good about it because if they don't do it, you'll just pick it up and do it yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Like so, getting help when you know that if the help doesn't come, you'll just do it because you can is very different than being paralyzed on a bed and having somebody have to bring a bedpan or wash down your body or brush your teeth. Like that's a different kind of help, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I didn't like that feeling at all. Like I've learned over time to accept help and see it as gratitude and instead of feeling like I need to constantly be the person helping everyone else all the time. But back then this was all just too much to have to be counting on all these people. So that again, that was this thing that kept pushing me. Also, was that I just needed to get some control again. When I got to leave the nursing home, and then I went to over to UPNC in Harrisburg to physical therapy, in a wheelchair, in an ambulance transport, inpatient rehab. They thought I'd be there for 30 to 60 days. I'd not been home in 10 weeks at this point. Not slept in my own bed, not had a meal with my kids. Not, like the idea of putting in another month or two seemed overwhelming. So I get there and they basically are like, what are your goals? My goal is to go home. And it goes, well, what is your home situation? Look, again, no first floor master bedroom, a half bath on the first floor that wasn't handicap accessible, a sunken family room that, was super popular at the time we built the house and but not handicap wheelchair friendly at all. Master bedrooms upstairs at the top of the steps, 14 stairs, 2 landings in it. And I want to be able to go upstairs, sleep in my bed. So my goal was to go home, be able to get up a set of stairs, sleep in my own bed. And then that was it. That was that simple. Or have dinner with my kids. So, okay, well, so, they had this idea that I had to get up the stairs. And so when they sent me out from the hospital, I was still non-weight bearing on my left leg. So my right leg, I could start to move. By the time I left the nursing home, I could move my right leg. I could bend it. I could move it. My left leg, I could sometimes slide it on a piece of plastic with my own head, but they could move it around. It was just this disconnect between the nerve damage and everything and not being able to move it myself. But my knee was like there was no physical damage left anymore. It was just this lack of connection between my brain and mostly from the nerve damage and everything that was done to my spine and to my pelvis.
Yeah, you almost had to like relearn how to use it.
Yeah, but then again, all that damage was on the left side too. So that's why they weren't letting me put any weight on my left side. And then when I went to rehab, they allowed me to put 20% weight. So how they monitor that, they stick this little boot on your foot that has like a pressure thing in it, and every time you put too much weight, it just yells at you, right?
Oh my gosh.
They put a shock collar on your foot.
Yeah. So I get to rehab in the morning. Again, they put me in an ambulance, and by this time I'm able to sit in a wheelchair at least for an hour. So they strap me in my wheelchair in a transport and transport me to rehab from the nursing home. I get in there, I start doing all this stuff. Most beautiful thing in the world. They have this swimming pool in which the platform raises. They roll you into on your wheelchair. It has a set of parallel bars beside it. They stand you up in it, and then they lower you into the water. So now when you're in water up to your shoulder, you are 80% buoyant. Perfect 80-20 ratio for allowing you to rehab when I could only put 20% of my weight down on my left leg. I'm on an underwater treadmill, cameras everywhere, therapists there with me, and I'm able to start rehabbing immediately with using my left leg. And whereas anything on dry land that I do has this buzzer on my foot that yells at me if I put too much weight on it. So there I'm have to be on crutches and walkers and supports things because I can't put weight down on my leg, right? Huge difference maker. Day one, they get me in there, and again, because I spent so much time laying on my back, and because I had a lung collapse, and my ability to have any cardio whatsoever was almost nil. Like the idea of just going across a room would break out in sweat.
Yeah.
Breathing heavy just to try to do it. So the first thing I get to do out of my wheelchair is put me on a set of parallel bars. Now, I had spent all those weeks working on my arms, and I'm like 155 pounds now, but I literally could go across those parallel bars just holding myself up and swinging. Yeah, swinging. Just using my right leg only, swinging. They're like, oh, that's impressive. I'm like, yeah, now I want to go climb stairs. I don't think you're ready to climb stairs. I'm like,
You're like, watch me.
watch me. Yeah. So like day two. So I spend morning, dry land, go up, take a nap, eat my lunch, go afternoon in water, doing all this work. Day two, back doing the same thing. I have these young guys for physical therapists, much younger than me, and I'm like, I'm gonna climb those steps over there. There's like those little fake steps, 3 steps over there. I'm like, yeah, let's see how it's going. Let's do the normal mat work and the parallel bar work. I'm like, I'm gonna try it. Like give me a crutch. I'll just use one banister. I'll use a crutch, and I'll hop, right? Lift myself and hop. Well, hopping was unfortunately kind of hurts because my pelvis is still being held together, my back's being held together with titanium, and I'm now bouncing onto it. But I go up the 3 steps. And now you also realize that you have to come back down. That's the only problem with these.
But at
with this
that
plane.
point, you made it. So this whole new world of possibilities probably just opened up to you, or were you like, I knew I was going to be able to do this?
No. I mean, I knew I was going to do it. I had no doubt that I was going to do it. I could have fallen backwards. They would have had a couch. I mean, there was 0 chance I could have passed out.
So it was when, not if. For you.
So I was going to try it. Whatever's going to happen. I've always had that daredevil thing in me since I was a kid. So this is just learning to do a double backflip off a diving board. Just going to do it. If it hurts, it hurts.
Yeah.
And so I do. I get back down. Tanya's there. She thinks it's awesome. We go back through that evening at 4 o'clock. The rehab doctors come back in, and I said, "Hey, I went up those stairs." He goes, "I heard." I said, I need to do 14 flights of stairs to get to my bedroom. I need to figure out how to do that. He said, well,
14 steps or
14 steps.
I was going to say
14
14 flights of stairs.
Yeah, 14
It's
steps.
like,
I was
how
gonna
big's
let
your
it
house,
roll.
John?
Yeah, 14 steps. 14 steps. Yeah, I live on the top floor of a 12-story building, and I have to go through from the basement. But so the next day, I'm back at rehab, and I got these 2 young guys, and I'm like, I got to figure out how to do 14 stairs. Well, when you're ready, right out here is a fire escape area. It's good. It's 14 steps up, a landing, 14 more steps, takes you to the 2nd floor. We'll work there when it's time. I want to do that this afternoon. He's like, no. So I do my water thing, do my rehab. Now I've got this. Now I've got this. Literally, I look every time I walk out of the rehab. I'm looking at the entrance to the fire emergency, and I'm like, we're going in that door.
Yeah.
I'm in a wheelchair. So when I'm not in rehab, I'm in a wheelchair. And so the next day, it's a snow day. It's icy. It's like icy. The kids have like a 2-hour delay for school. So Tanya's normally there in the morning. She gets the kids off to school. She's there for when I start rehab at 9. And she's not there because and we have cell phones. She must have called in the doctors or something. Called in the rehab and said, I'm going to get the kids have delay. I'm going to get them to school and then I'll be over. So I'm down there and I'm doing this work and I'm like these guys. I'm like, I'm going to climb these stairs today. Like, I don't think it's a good idea. Like, I want to do it. I don't know how I convinced them. I mean, again, they were like 28, 30-year-old guys. And I'm like, I can do this. And so they're like, okay, well, we got to finish the mat work. We got to do all this. So we go over there. Now, again, it's freezing rain outside and yucky and gray. And I'm by the door that's the emergency exit out because the emergency stairs are right there. So we go into this hallway and they wheel my wheelchair up there and they give me one crutch. And there's a railing on either side of this pretty well stairwell. So 14 steps is to this first landing in the middle, in between the first floor and the second floor. And so I get up and I get this thing under my right arm and I get the railing on my left because I can't put any weight on my left. I have this boot on to yell at me. And I start going up these stairs with one guy in front of me and one behind me. And it takes me 10 minutes, but I get up to this landing. Now, none of us, including my therapists, realize that we're now halfway between the first and the second floor. I can't get my wheelchair. I have to go down or keep going up 14 more sets of, like, I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
Right? There's
It's funny.
and I'm in sweatpants and a t-shirt, and I have to still wear this stormtrooper brace yet on my body as well. So I'm sweating like crazy. And so the guy's like, "Oh, we're gonna get you a chair," and he runs like over to the rehab, gets a folding chair, and brings up, and I sit in the middle of this stairwell, and I'm like, "All right, well, we got to get back down." Like, we can go up. I'm going, "No, we'll go down," because I got to go down from my house. So if I go up 14, I got to say I can go down 14. Mm-hmm. Down's a lot harder. From running. Like, running up a mountain's one thing.
Yeah.
Running down, you're like fighting gravity. Everyone wants you to go this way real fast.
Yep. Running down the mountain is where runners get into trouble.
Yeah.
Because it feels like it's easy, but it's really killing
and you're trying to
legs.
control your speed, and you're trying to control momentum. Mm-hmm. Up is like stopping you the whole way. Like, down is like, go.
Yeah.
And so now I've got it in front of me. I'm trying to get down this thing, one step, trying to get a crutch, and the next step in front of me, which is uneven now. And I get down to the bottom of the thing, and I do it, and I literally fall into my wheelchair, and they kind of set me up in there, and I'm like, man, my God, I'm dying. I said, I got put me outside. So we got this door. We opened the door, and like, it's now like raining. The freezing rain has stopped, but it's cold and wet, but I'm sweating, and I'm like literally steam's coming off me as soon as I got outside, and I'm sitting there in my wheelchair, and here comes Tanya.
Oh my gosh.
And she takes one look at me like, what the hell did you do? And then she takes 2 look at my 2 therapists like you guys are next.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, I went up the 14 stairs. And she's like, oh. And they're like, yeah, he went up and came back down. And it wasn't pretty, but he did it. And she's like, you can tell she's kind of happy. At the same time, she's like, she's not a risk taker at all.
Right.
So she's like, this sounds really stupid.
Because, I mean, if you fell.
Well, set back all kinds of things.
Oh my gosh.
But I didn't fall.
Good news.
So I go up to my room. Now she's got to like strip me out of my clothes because I'm just sweated. Like, I've got a t-shirt under the stormtrooper thing, and then I have the sweat, like a long sleeve turkey trot actually t-shirts over top of it, just stuff to throw over top of it that's big to go over top of this thing, and so I've got to change out of this soaking wet clothing. They bring my food. All of a sudden, here comes my doctor. And he walks in the room, and I go, I climbed 14 stairs today. He said, I heard. And I'm like, I want to go home. He's like, you're not ready yet, but that's impressive. It was stupid, but it was impressive. So I go to the afternoon swimming stuff, which feels good. The next day, I convince these guys, with Tanya there, that I'm going to do the stairs again.
All 14 or both?
All 14.
or
14 up and 14 down.
Okay.
To the landing again. Same deal. I have to sit in a chair up there. This time they were prepared. They had a chair up there. I went up, down, did the whole thing, just sweat ball mess again. I go up. Doctor doesn't come to see me at lunch, which they normally usually come in at 4 and make their final rounds, check in. I go and do my underwater treadmill work that afternoon with Tanya there. Doctor comes in at 4 o'clock. I'm back in my bed, resting. And I said, I did it again. He said, I heard. I said, I want to go home. He said, all right. He said, I think we can make that happen later this week.
So you forced your way into getting to go home.
I spent 5
You
days.
were like,
I spent
"You will
5. I
not
spent
keep me
5.
here."
I spent 5 days in inpatient rehab. I was supposed to spend as much as 2 months.
Wow.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Now I went home in a car that Tanya drove. So like they wheeled me out my. I'm still in a wheelchair.
Hold on. Let me pause you there. Getting into that car,
First time.
what was that like? That had to have been at least a little bit of a roller coaster ride of emotions.
I thought it would be. Now, Tanya had been driving to come over to see me. She got behind the wheel. I jokingly say, I'm not used to being the passenger to anybody, and I'm a little bit of a control freak, and my wife's a terrible driver. She's a great driver. but she doesn't drive fast enough, or she brakes too soon. Again, I'm the driver.
Yeah.
Like, we'll make a trip to South Carolina, a 10-hour drive. I'll drive the whole thing. I don't.
That's how Ben and I are.
Yeah.
I'm the passenger
Yeah,
princess.
she'll do whatever she wants on her phone or read a book or do whatever. I'm like, I'm driving. That's what I do. I like it. But anyway, so it wasn't. The weird part was, one, I came out in a wheelchair, and I have to use a slide board, like, again, this piece of plastic to slide from there to into her car. Okay. She has a new car because it was her car I was driving that we totaled. And the car was only 10 months old, I think, like that when we totaled. It was an Acura RDX, the small Acura SUV. Saved our lives. So we got another one. And then we got another one after that. So I get in. She then has to break down my wheelchair and put it in the back, lift it up and put it in there because I need to carry a wheelchair with me. I'm in the front seat. I get buckled in, and she gets in, and she looks at me. I look at her and say, "I love you." She says, "Love you." Okay. We just pull out and we drive the 35 minutes back to Carlisle. We talk about what we're going to do the night for dinner, and just sort of about as close to as
Getting
normal,
back to normal, yeah.
normal as I have experienced, because it's like a surreal experience just to go home. Like, I haven't been in my house now for 14 weeks. It's like Valentine's is coming. Like, it's, weird, right? Get to my house and pull in the driveway. Here, Andrew Cronenberg built a ramp into my front yard, because we had a front porch, like just a one step up porch, and then one step up into the door. Built a ramp for my wheelchair to get me in the house. My sunken family room is avoidable by going around through the dining room, so it's only the family room that's sunken. So I can still get into the kitchen. I can't get into the sunken family room space without getting onto crutches or something to get up. I couldn't take a wheelchair down it.
Yeah.
But we have the wheelchair ramp. We get me in. I don't go upstairs. We have a bathroom that I can access only from in a walker at that point. My chair, my relaxing recliner chair that every man should own, was moved up into the kitchen so that I could slide board from my wheelchair with Tanya's help into this chair that reclines, right? So I sat in the kitchen in a recliner chair. Kids come home, they see me, from school, and I'm in the house, and I don't know if they knew. I don't know if Tanya told them I was coming or not. They were super excited. That night we had dinner while I sat in a wheelchair at the kitchen table. First meal I've had with my kids in 14 weeks, and it's now the end of the day, and now I have to get up the stairs. So, the kids like, go up to bed. We'll come up. Mom will tuck you in. I start the process of going up 2 steps, landing, 8 steps, landing, and then the remaining steps up to our floor. And then our bedroom is literally at the top of the stairs. So with Tanya behind me, I'm sure freaking out.
Oh, I can't imagine.
I have, and we have open railing. So I have a wall on the right and the railings on the left. So I've got to use my left side to get up which normally I'd want the crutch under my left side, which is the side I can't put the weight down on yet, and go up hopping the other way, but I don't have a choice. There's only one rail and it's open, and so I get up to the first landing, and I'm sitting there, get up to the next landing, and it wasn't near as hard as doing the straight one in the hospital or in the rehab. And so I get up there, I get over to my wardrobe at this point is made up of pajama pants and t-shirts. I mean, that's
it.
Yeah. No shoes. I mean, socks with the slippy stuff on the bottom that from the hospital. So I had a whole collection of. I finally got rid of, and so get in to my bed. The kids come and say goodnight, and I don't sleep well. For years, I wouldn't sleep well because of the pain and not. But I slept in my own bed the first night, and it was just this most incredible experience. It was a Friday. Saturday, I'm home. Manage the stairs in the morning. Sunday, I'm home. Monday, I start outpatient rehab. Spend the next 2 years, Monday through Friday, every morning going to outpatient rehab.
How long did it take you to be able to start running again?
So it was my goal, and I said I would run a year after the accident.
Okay.
Everyone told me I was crazy. Well, some people told me I was crazy. The ones who mattered, like doctors, said I was crazy, but my family was just like, whatever, say whatever you want. Yeah, it's fine.
You're cute.
Yeah, it's
We love
nice.
you.
Yeah, whatever. So I had run the turkey trot right before the car accident, December 1st. Thanksgiving was like this year. It was like late, like the 28th, 29th. It was the very end of November. Like turkey trot was like the next. There was a turkey trot, and then the accident happened like that next weekend, like Thanksgiving,
wow.
Thanksgiving after Thanksgiving weekend. And so I said, I'm going to do a turkey trot. And now I'm outpatient rehabbing, and I'm walking with a walker, and I can use crutches as well. But crutches are kind of easy to get around, but you don't have the walker. I could literally put a basket on it and move my laptop and stuff with the walker. Right. I'm going into the office. I now have Bill Hook's office on the first floor because my office was with Matt Madden upstairs,
Okay.
and I couldn't get up the stairs. So I had a handicap ramp in that was there at the office, and I would sit right inside the door at Bill Hook's with my walker. But I said I'm going to do the turkey trot, and so I got enough people to kind of buy in that I was going to do it, to the point where the office decided they were going to do a jogging with John. T-shirts were made.
Oh my God.
I have still hat ones. And I see Katie Madden wear. I mean, they're still in circulation. I've seen Christy Knox's girls wear them. Like they're still out there. So I got to the turkey trot 5K. Now, the year before I ran the turkey trot in I think a 5:52 split. Pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I did the turkey trot that year with a walker, with a bunch of buddies holding me up for part of it, with stops where I had to sit in people's chairs who were along the course of the race holding signs and "Go John Go" and 1 hour and 2 minutes
There you go.
with a walker. I finished it.
But you did it.
I did it. So did I run? No. Did I complete a 5K race? Yes. Did I do it in any type of record time? No.
I bet you weren't last, though. Were you last?
My group was, but
Your
we
group
also were
was.
last to take off,
Okay.
because we were in the walker group. And again, wasn't even near as big as it is today, but we were still we let everybody go. And then
That makes sense.
And then I had 5 people around me who helped different times, my buddy John Peters, Todd Long. I had, Andrew, kind of like I had people that were there who were just going to like, when I was going to go down, they were going to help me stay up.
Right.
And so I did it, and I had Thanksgiving, sat in my chair, in my wheelchair, the rest of the day. But yeah, so I did that, and then literally the next year I ran it. I ran at a 12-minute pace. I mean, we can talk like you're a runner. If you like finding something that I used to be fairly good at and then wasn't good at it was super difficult for me.
Yeah.
Like, it was emotionally very challenging to be bad at something that I was, if I wasn't great, at least in my little fish pond, I was decent,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and now I wasn't. So even though I made it this goal, and it literally took 2 years from when I said I was going to do it to be able to do it, it had no benefit to me. Like, it felt disappointing.
You felt behind.
I felt disappointed. I felt
Yeah.
like this is something I was good at now, and it just was reinforcing the fact that I'm not the same. I'm not going to be the same. That I'm going to continue to have these things as long as I'm on this earth, and this is just going to be the way it is. And so I had to figure out some other way to get what I got out of running, and kind of replace that with that same kind of like need to excel and get better at things. The great thing about running is, you start off by saying, I want to run a mile. And next thing you know, if you get that runner high thing going, next thing you know, I'm going to run a 5K.
Mm-hmm.
And then you want to run a 10K. Then you want to half a marathon. And then I got to do a marathon. And then you're like, hey, let me go try to do a 100-mile endurance race. Run all night and all day. And, like it starts, I don't know if to explain to you. It just, and when I couldn't get that from running, because it was
Yeah.
just going backward, it just felt like this isn't it. Like, I can't do this.
So that became running was your thing that you got all like a lot of happiness, enjoyment. It was peaceful for you. It was something you were good at.
Yeah. Well, and again, when I was in college at Lemon Valley, I was a sprinter, hurdler. I ended up doing the decathlon because I was good at a lot of events. The mile was the longest I had to run.
Yeah.
And I didn't really become a running distance stuff until after I got out of college and married, and like it was convenient because I could go run 5 miles and lived in downtown Carlisle and knock that out a few days a week, and it just became a way to stay in shape. And then as I met more friends that were also in the running, you start to become this group like, oh, let's go run this 5K race together. And then, I'm going to run a half marathon. Let's train together. Like, so it kind of grew out of the fact that I had been an athlete, but I wasn't a runner. My brother's a pole vaulter, also went to Lemon Valley. He's run, I don't know, 20 marathons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, he just became, obsessed with it. But it wasn't like something that was all, competing was always something we did, but the running just became, something that you could get a good you could take an hour and run, 8-10 miles and be back before the kids get up. Like it was, it became this thing that you could do early. You didn't have to drive anywhere to do it. You could just leave out of your front yard. And so, that's where it grew from. When I couldn't do it anymore. And now I'm in rehab 5 days a week. I'm walking with a cane. I'm still struggling. I'm not making the progress that I thought I should be making. I started to get a little bit of this, like I should just, I had doctors that would start to tell me things like, you should just be grateful you're alive. Part of my story is I had to go and get that abdominal muscles repaired. I went in to do that, and they found a hole in my heart that hadn't been there. Super, super rare. Like, turns out there's only one other person in the country that has what they call a traumatic VSD, so like this hole in your ventricle of the bottom of the heart. You hear about children born with it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they close shut as they grow. Sometimes they have to repair those. Mine was from trauma. Mine was the very bottom of my heart, and from all that collision, but it didn't open up. It was like I had so many doctors and so much stuff hooked up to me that there was no chance they missed it. So I go in 10 months after the car accident to talk about having this abdominal muscles reattached, and the nurse for the anesthesiologist hears it, like just like pre-op. She's like, you have a hole in your heart. You know, I'm like, Tanya's there. She's like, I can't drive a car still. And she's like, no. She was like, yeah, he's a heart murmur. It's very easy to hear. And so she's like, Tanya's like, we've seen so many doctors, like he doesn't have a heart murmur. So then the anesthesiologist comes in and he's like, let's say, oh yeah. And then she gives Tanya the headset or the stethoscope. And then she gives me the stethoscope and it's like, bum, bum, swoosh, bum, bum, swoosh. I'm like, all right. So I don't think anything about it. Tanya's like, we get in the car, we drive home, we're going to surgery the next day. On the way home, we get a call from the surgeon, like, we can't do the surgery. We got to find out what's going on. Like, you're going to go see the top cardiologist at Penn State tomorrow. They're going to look at it. Long story short, they're like, there's no rhyme or reason. This doesn't exist. It's never happened. We don't know if it's going to get bigger. We don't know what's going to happen when all my organs are out here, right? Mm-hmm. So they have to push all my organs back in because I look like a woman in her third trimester. I don't have any abdominal muscles. You know, I just have this cavity. And so now they're super scared that they're going to push all these organs in, pull my abdominal muscles across, and not be able to and cause this hole to open up. Mm. So they postpone this for like 2 more months and have all this research done, and then, you know, they're doing all this conversations at like clinics and retreats for all these cardiologists where my cases keeps getting looked at. That's how there's one other person in California who had a traumatic accident who didn't die. See, the thing is, I should have died from everything else. So the fact that I lived and then over time my heart tissue died, you know, reality is all the other injuries probably should have killed me first, and then it did everyone else, and then there's not a lot of experience of people having heart tissue start to die.
Yeah, so you're just setting a new precedent of.
Yeah. Well, again,
we didn't know this was possible because nobody else has lived through
especially
this
here
before.
in Central, like this, like there's no real buddy who's seen it.
Right.
And so, so finally they agree, because this is like having the longer my abdominal muscles aren't attached, the more they reticulate back, the less likely they're going to be able to put them in at all. Also, when I spent 10 weeks laying on my back in the beginning, my bowel grew adhered to the scar. Mm. So it turns out to be a huge surgery where I have a plastic surgeon who has to rebuild my abdominal muscles. I have a general surgeon who has to disconnect my skin from my bowel without nicking my bowel, or they can't put any Gore-Tex mesh, which they're pretty sure they're going to have to put in, like a hernia. Like I just have a giant hernia is what I have. And I need a cardiologist there because in case this hole starts to do anything and they have to do emergency heart surgery.
What an ordeal.
You're just like, I
And you're
cannot
like,
get
I
out
just-
of these
And
woods.
it's like setbacks.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like setback after setback after setback, right? And I'm like, this is just, you know, this is crazy. But again, positive, trying to be positive, right? I get this surgery. It's like now August of the, oh yeah. So it was March. So it's probably August of the next year after. So, and I go in and have this all done. They have to put me back in induced coma because my organs shut down when they pushed everything back together, because my organs got used to being here, and now all of a sudden we shove them all back in and pull the skin across. That doesn't go well for a day or two, and you know I have a feeding tube because the one thing they just now don't want me to do is throw up, because now they've got all this stuff stitched together. The muscles, they couldn't stretch them, so they have to cut little cuts into them to allow them to stretch farther. The top of it's all Gore-Tex mesh. They were able to separate my bowel without nicking it, which was good, because otherwise they would have sewed me back up because the Gore-Tex couldn't be in there if there was any contamination. My heart doesn't explode.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I spend 15 days in the hospital for that abdominal surgery. I go home. I'm home. It's now my birthday is the middle of September. And you know, I think this will be my first, you know, big birthday since everything. And Tanya's trying to plan this, you know, birthday thing. We go in for a post follow-up. I now have a belly button.
Oh,
I have
okay.
I have Brad Pitt's belly button. Brad, if you're listening. And only because I'm in the waiting room for surgery before they call me back for to get for pre-op. And I'm looking at People magazine, and I jokingly, there's a picture like Brad Pitt from like Fight Club or something, and without shirt on. And so I like tear it out and shove it in my hand. Okay, so I'm in there for the surgeon, plastic surgeon comes in. I'm all in my gown, ready to go into surgery, and Tanya's sitting beside me, holding my hand, and he said, "Anything else you have questions about?" I was like, So we're going to make a belly button. He's like, yep. I said, well, I had an innie. Can we make sure it's an innie this time? He's like, oh, that's the easy one. We just make a little pull. Like outies are hard. Innies, no problem. I'm like,
Oh my
perfect.
gosh.
And I said, and by the way, can it look like this? And I just pull it out of my hand, which I'm holding in my hand, hiding the whole time from everybody so that they don't try to take it from me because I've they got nothing but a gown on. And I hand it to him and he opens up his Brad Pitt. He goes, sure. I said, my wife
Give
always
me
wanted me to
Brad
have
Pitt's
Brad Pitt's
belly
belly button.
Oh
But
my
so I
word.
go through all this, I get the surgery. I'm in the hospital forever again because of all the complications related to it. I go home from home and I have to go back in like a week for just a pre-op follow-up, right? So I'm in at the plastic surgeon at this point. He's just looking at how things are healing. Unfortunately, they weren't able to get rid of all the tick marks, but they were able to make my scar, which was about almost half an inch, 3/4 of an inch wide, thinner, but the tick marks are still there, which to this day I kind of like. And so he's looking at all this, and again, I can't drive, so Tanya's driving me over there, so she's with me, and I'm up on this, and all of a sudden he's looking at my ankles. He goes, well, have your ankles been swollen like this before? And I had like a pair of loafers on, because again, I can't get shoes on very well. And I'm like, no, and Tanya's like, no, and he starts looking, and so they immediately send me in for scans on a Friday. Like we're there Friday afternoon. Like the first place they send me, that people aren't there anymore in the hospital. They have to send me to another floor to find somebody to just do these scans. Turns out I threw a whole bunch of blood clots into my into my leg, and I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Well, it means you're not going home. You're gonna spend the weekend in the hospital, my birthday, getting you on blood thinners. Now, this is the start of now what has become the last 22 surgeries on my legs because of all the scarring damage that had been done, not only from the accident, but then all of the 20-some surgeries in which I've thrown numerous blood clots, the abdominal one being the one that probably did the most amount of damage at one time. And so, like, a extremely depressing 3 days where I had to give myself Lovenox. Well, in the hospital, they give me Lovenox shots in my stomach twice a day. Then I went home and had to continue to do that, which I've done like now 5 times, where, you know, you're just giving yourself a shot in your stomach, which is a blood thinner, which also causes you to bruise the longer you're on it. And it's just a vicious circle of blood thinners and Coumadin, which is pretty havoc on your body, and regulating is a real problem, and falling is a bigger problem. And falling was a common issue when you can't use your left leg very well. And
Yeah.
so it's just a circle of things going out of control. And you know, it's 2 years now, you know, coming out, and I'm still in rehab. And I'm like, I'm there on like a Tuesday, and I'm like, second therapist, I'm like, that I've worked with since I've been there. I'm like, I quit. And he's like, what? I'm like, I'm done. I'm just not going to do this anymore. I said, I used to run marathons. Like, I'm going to push myself much harder than you're going to push me. And since that time, like, I've talked to a bunch of physical therapists, and they're like, yeah, everybody in there is generally an older person rehabbing a hip or a knee. I mean, like, most people aren't going to, you know, we have to force people to push themselves a little harder.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I just can't do it. I had made a friend there who was also super injured, committed suicide. The next year, my best friend commits suicide. And I'm just like, these are the people that I kind of like, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do it myself. And I quit. And I walked out. And I was driving myself at that point, taking 90 milligrams of morphine twice a day,
Oh my gosh.
which I could function on. I was a better realtor on 90 milligrams of morphine. Just,
A lot more patient, I bet.
but be tolerant. I mean, again, I can talk forever about how people get addicted. And this is all before all of this narcotics stuff. This is when we were
Right.
just giving it out. And I needed it, and there was no question. I had pain management specialists. They were all like, you got to take this because you're not going to function otherwise. But I said, I'm just going to do it on my own. And I called Tanya, and I said, you know, on most days I would go to rehab in the morning, go home, and then go to the office for a couple hours. I said, I quit rehab. It's been 2 years. It's done. I'm going to do it myself. And so I had sat on the board of UCP United Cerebral Palsy, and they did a program at the Y that was adults with special needs. And they went in at 10 a.m. And I was like, I go in the first time, the next day to the Y, 10 a.m. on my walker, and I don't know that these adults with special needs are there, but I walk in and like 12 of them, and they all have a somebody with them who's helping to train them. Each one has their own individual, right? And the majority of them, I would say, are like 19 to 30. They're not a lot of like older ones. They're all, what I would call young adults. And so like all of a sudden I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to do this, the circuit stuff, not the free weight stuff. And I'm on the circuit. They're on the circuit. They're on the stationary bike. I try to go on the stationary bike. Like everything I do, there's some guy or girl with special needs, a lot of Down syndrome, just kicking my butt left and right, like just left. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm embarrassed, and everything is just. I'm like, I'm trying to do like press machine. I can't like 20 pounds on the thing. I got like 30 minutes. I'm like, I'm out. I'm not doing this either. And so I get on. I get back in on my walker. Get out of the gym. Go home. I probably pout that night. At this point, I'm a little more out of shape than I had been before, because now I'm just like, oh, I'm going to eat steaks, so I want to eat steaks. I'm going to drink wine because I want to drink wine. I'm alive. I'm just going to do these things.
You're like, I'm enjoying life.
Yeah. I already look like a freak. I get scars. I don't care. I started to buy into like, just be happy you're alive, And so, I would spend, a lot of time sitting there. And so I just happened to be that evening sitting, and my daughter's out kicking soccer balls. Loved soccer even before the car accident. Loved it then even more. So she'd just be out there juggling. And then she comes in, and I'm sitting in my desk working, and she's crying. I just assumed like she fell or she did something. And I said, what's wrong? She said, I miss my daddy used to play with me. Oh, now I'm
Moment number two.
I don't have a ton of emotion, but I got angry. Like, I'm pissed. Not at her, I'm pissed at me. And so I kind of go to bed that night. I'm telling Tanya like this, I got to do better. I'm just not like, I got to find some balance. And that night I'm laying in bed. And like most nights I just don't sleep. Because my back was all busted up. I got to keep finding a position. I can't lay on my side. I can't lay on my stomach for sure. I've messed up abdominal muscles. So I just kind of lay flat on my back and just keep trying to move my hip to find. And so I would be waking up with pain. I'm still taking all these narcotics, and I wake up at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I'm like, oh, I go to the bathroom, and I get up, and my walker's there, so I have to like use my walker. I get over there, and I'm like, holy shit, my shoulders kill me. I'm like, oh yeah, I went to the gym. Like, I just had this like aha moment. This is the first time that I didn't wake up and go, oh, my back's killing me. Oh, my pelvis hurts. Oh, I can't feel my foot. Like I literally woke up and said, my shoulders and chest are killing me. I was like, oh, I went to the gym. I'm like, oh, this is great. Now it's a little sadomasochistic because
it's a different kind of pain.
Yeah, because now I'm controlling the pain. Like now I'm like, this is the best thing in the world. I'm going to the gym and I'm going to hurt like hell tomorrow morning when I wake up, but it's not going to be the first thing I think of is my back hurt. Like now all of a sudden I'm now kind of to dictate where the pain's coming from a little bit, which.
Yeah, and you know that there's actual things to gain out of that pain. Like you put yourself in that pain and your muscles will sore because they're growing.
Yeah. Like I'm doing something now that is a positive thing, and it's so still associated with pain. And now it's just become this thing where how much more can I push myself to cause more pain? Okay. It's got some good and bad. I mean, there's no question. There's some parts about it but for me, when you're living with chronic pain all the time, the idea that, like to this day, I don't wake up any day ever and the first thing is the car accident. Yeah. Because I can't, I'm covered in scars. I can't walk into my bathroom in front of a mirror with a shirt on and not see scars. Like, it's just there all the time, right? But now this working out thing becomes this like new obsession where it's pain inducing. I go from, on a walker within 3 months to using the cane to within, another probably 7 to 8 months later, just without a cane at all, just constantly testing exactly where, understanding I can compensate for missing half my abdominal muscles by building stronger obliques, having really strong shoulders, arms, compensate for the lack of lower body strength where I can have to move, pick up stuff tinier, like all of a sudden it's starting to become very purposeful. But it's also like, as like anything, this no longer is enough. So now I got to push myself harder. Yeah. And, about 4 years after the car accident, I'm 225 pounds, like 9% body fat, like just
Thriving.
benching like 360, like just silly stuff for a guy whose frame should be, I'm 6'2". It should be a guy who's like 180 pounds.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous
For-
amount of weight for somebody
Yeah.
who's
not built
completely
stocky.
healthy.
Yeah,
Like
and-
never
and-
had
and-
any
yeah.
Minus
trauma.
you still have mesh for abs.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. And just built, like I'm just not built stocky. Like I have long arms. Like that's a lot of weight to push around with long arms.
Long way to push it.
Yeah. And so, but it just becomes this thing. And when that happens, a couple things happen. Like one, because our accident happened December 1st, and because we all survived the car accident, Christmas Day, the Carlisle Sentinel writes an article, and so does the Patriot, now Penn Live, writes this Christmas Day articles, interviews Tanya, has a picture of our family, me in the nursing home, just this kind of feel good story because we're having Christmas together. We didn't die in the car accident. So it was like a
Hallmark story for
But
Carlisle.
it came out on Christmas Day, right?
Yeah.
So it was Christmas Day that they put in the papers. So the next year at Christmas, they want to do a kind of a follow-up thing. I'm now, at that point, walker, wheelchair kind of combo thing. I just had the abdominal thing to happen. Still a good story, right? Out of that, I get this like request from Harrisburg Magazine because they saw and they wanted to write something about us. That point, I'm back in now doing the gym work, and so they want to come in and show me in the gym. They want to show me with the UCP special needs. Those guys became the guys I worked out with for at least the next year and a half, 2 years. I always go at 10 a.m. with them. There's probably some that could still take me, but so I started. So they pick up that kind of piece, and so now all of a sudden I'm starting to get more requests like, hey, like the rehab that was out. They'd be like, hey, there's a guy who was really injured. He's about your age. One guy I remember he was taking down a tree. He had a tree. He was a teacher and he had a tree cutting service, and he had a tension on it with a tractor, and the tree snapped in the middle, fell on his legs. Cell phone was up on the tractor, shattered his legs. So I'd get called like, come, this guy's real depressed. Can you talk to him? Soldiers, people like, oh, could you go talk to our friend's son? So which I love to do and try to give people encouragement. And so that kind of led to like, oh, can you talk to at Hershey for our annual campaign? And again, I was just telling my story, and this is my story. It's like, so I can talk forever like now because it's just my story. I'm not like, trying to regurgitate.
Yeah, it's who you are.
Yeah, and it's just I lived it. So, so that kind of started to like this talking thing, or people at least wanting me to talk to other people or talk to a group or talk youth groups and I was like, sure, I don't mind. Like I said, it's therapy to me, right? The magazine things. The local magazine stuff started to like get other companies to say, can you come talk? And somebody, I don't remember who, there was Eagle Rare is a bourbon company that's part of the whole same company that makes Buffalo Trace and Papillon. I don't know back then if they weren't just their own distillery, but they had this Rare Life thing that they were doing some sort of event where they had all these categories and they wanted people to nominate other people. And if you won the overall, I think you got $20,000 to give to a charity of your choice. If you finished in any other categories, you had $10,000. Somebody put me in for Survivor, which I always thought was ironic because, by the way, I didn't think I did anything to survive. I mean, I always say, like, God and doctors are the reason I survived. I can take credit for what happened after I came out of coma going forward. You know, I always say, like, I didn't have any control over where I started, only where I was going to go. Like, this is what I was handed. So it was weird that they were like, oh, you're our national winner for Survivor. I'm like, great. Here's $10,000. Gave it to the Y. We bought brand new dumbbells.
There you go.
But that got press, and then out of nowhere, I kind of get this email. I remember we're in the new office now on Walnut Bottom. I had this email, and it's from Men's Fitness Magazine, and it said we'd like to write. Now, I read Men's Fitness Magazine. I was working out a ton, and this is before all the stuff was online, so you actually did subscribe to magazines to read that kind of stuff to work out. And there was always this like last page success story kind of thing at the very end that would be like, oh, this is what I did to survive, or this is how I lost all this weight or whatever. And so they're like, we want to do one about you. I'm like, great. You know, that's one more thing to help motivate other people. I thought it was fine. So apparently the person who writes that goes to their editorial board meeting where they decide what that magazine for that month is going to be, and they decide they want to write a full feature piece about it. So I'm like, cool. What does that mean? Like, well, we're going to send a photographer. I was like, okay. And then we have a writer. These are all subcontracted people, apparently. And so I got a photographer from New York City who generally is in like the Middle East at wars, taking like wartime photos.
Oh, wow.
Like he'd been blown up numerous times inside tanks as a civilian taking photos. Like he shot a whole series out of just like this little bulletproof glass window that's in the bottom of a tank. Wow. Okay, like way like more qualified than some guy's going to come take pictures of me and my scars and me working out, right?
Yeah.
And then a guy who writes my story was like a writer for ESPN the magazine, and back when that was a big thing, and like these are all like legitimate,
You're
like
just like,
New,
I'm
New
getting
York,
all
These
the
are
bells and
professionals.
whistles.
New York City level, people, and I'm like, so they do this article and they tell me it's going to be out in like the April issue, and this is like November maybe. I don't know. I don't remember. It was cool enough. I was outside in a short sleeve shirt because they wanted muscle photos and of me jogging up and down the street, and I'm thinking, this is weird, but whatever, great. So, like the magazine comes out, I know it's coming, but it's still like it's either coming in my mail, or I'm going to see it in the giant grocery store. Like it's back when the whole title racks of magazines, right?
Yeah.
And so like all of a sudden someone calls me and says, hey, you're in Men's Fitness Magazine. I'm like, I heard it was coming. He's like, yeah, got one at the grocery store. So it's crazy. It was LL Cool J on the front cover.
Oh my gosh.
And then this 4-page article, including a full-page photo of me.
Do you still have the magazine?
Uh-huh. I still have the originals, and I have one framed that's in my office.
Oh, nice.
That somebody had framed for me.
That's awesome.
But it's crazy. Like okay, now everything's really started to snowball. Now and people really want me to talk, and now I've got to now I'm like this professional. Like I got to have a
So now you're a speaker.
yeah. So now I'm
You're
a
a
speaker.
motivational speaker.
So now I'm a motivational speaker. And again, you have to remember this is all happening during the recession. Like this is 07. So this is 07 when the accident happens, and this is 08, 09, 010. This is the real estate collapse. Literally the stock market and the real estate collapse while I was in a coma.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
legit. I was in a,
Yeah.
so I was kind of woke up to the fact that the stock market had crashed and the price of real estate in an industry that I just joined was falling apart. Was falling apart. But yeah, so I was getting hired by like companies to go like be the motivational keynote on the last day at the breakfast where it was just like, people my age, men and women who were like, again, my story is like, could happen to anybody, right? So it was just like one of those like, come tell me. And it felt a lot like everything's really crappy in your industry, but at least you're not me. Like it was
Right.
like
it could be worse.
yeah, it could be worse. Your family could have just got run over by a car.
Yeah.
Like just driving.
We just
home from
cut your
kids.
income by 50%, but you could be in a wheelchair, not able to
yeah,
walk.
Yeah, you could you could be that guy. So
Could be dead.
And I mean, it was like 2 or 3 years of doing a lot of like interesting, like for financial institutions and corporate meetings, up and down the East Coast and Vegas. And it was, I mean, it was a little surreal. And then all of a sudden I'm starting to get paid like money and transportation and the hotels and airline. And like I had to fly to these things for 1 hour talks. And
So you're starting to notice that your story has a huge impact and people want to hear it. And now you're like, oh, there's a lot more purpose left in life from this story, and you started to take advantage of that a little bit.
yeah, I think for me, it was like, okay, again, a lot of them were morning talks. Even the regional stuff was like an 8 a.m., 9 a.m. What I found every time was like 1 hour. Like I could never do it for less than, you're seeing, like, obviously I can't do this in two. So like, it's a lot. And so if I was going, if I was doing a biography of what happened, it's one thing. We spent a lot of time of a biography of what happened to my family. We haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about all those things that came from it, good and bad. So I would, like 1 hour is like, I spend 30, 40 minutes just giving the highlights of why I'm in a position to be able to tell you this is what you should probably want to do with your life. And this is how you overcome adversity. This is how you deal with setbacks. It's, I would spend a lot of time building up, like, by the way, I've had 37 surgeries. Now I've had 45, but it's like, it's a lot. It's
Yeah.
overwhelming. Then I found out I have a hole in my heart. Like it just kept going, right? And setback after setback. And so, yeah, so for me, it was like therapy. Like when I would do these 9 a.m., like I'd go in my car, and you could probably appreciate this more than anybody. Like I'd go in my car and I'd have to decompress and just shut down and take a nap before I could drive home from Lancaster or drive home from State College. Or like I would literally just have to go in my car. Like I would be high like I am now, just completely focused. Stay around for 30 minutes doing extra Q&As with people who wanted to ask me things. Exchange emails with people who wanted me to talk to some of their family or do something. And then get in my car and just collapse.
Shut it down.
Just collapse. Like exhaustion, fall asleep. I set an alarm on my phone for 1 hour, and I'd have to sleep in my car for 1 hour before I could drive home. Then God forbid I had to try to catch a flight.
Yeah.
Get back to the hotel room and just go to sleep. So go from wearing a suit to like just laying in my suit sleeping. And it became good and bad, like at that time. Because again, my kids at this time were, they're 12 and 16, 15 and 13. Like they're in that age range where they have a lot of activities and sporting events. And my wife runs her own business, and I'm trying to run a real estate team. And it's a lot. And granted, even if they're going to pay me and they're going to fly me, it's 3 days of commitment for me to go speak for an hour. If I have to go to Vegas or I have to go to Massachusetts somewhere or I have to go to Florida.
Yeah, the worst part is being apart from your family, which you fought so hard to be able to get back to be with them and
Yeah, it
have a
seemed out of
normal
balance,
routine.
right? It seemed like it wasn't the balance that I should have. Like I wanted to help people. This is long before like you could do all the video conferencing stuff where you could.
Right.
I mean, so then I started writing a blog because like I'll just write. I'll just write about things, let people read it. I decided I was going to try to write down everything that happened from the accident, from my perspective, with the idea that my kids would want to know what it was, right? Someday. They weren't at the age where I could tell them now, right? So I started writing just on my own. I was never like this prolific writer, not a prolific reader really either, but I was like, all right, I'm going to just write my story. As that kept going, then I was like, I knew somebody who was a English professor at Shippensburg. I knew her father, and she's like, I'll work on your manuscript for you. And again, I was just thinking, I put this thing together. Well, when the whole men's fitness came, and then I started speaking all the time, I was like, well, you have a book? I'm like, well, I kind of wrote something, and then all of a sudden, like, well, you should get a publisher. Well, we need an agent, and then all of a sudden, all that became this whole ongoing, process of submitting and telling my story and talking to other people who publish books and what's your experience? And
It's a totally different journey.
yeah,
Yeah.
But now, fast forward to today,
back doing it.
back doing it, and now you're thinking about, or you are going to be coaching.
Yeah, the great thing about technology, including this stuff, is like sure, I can still speak, but it still requires me to travel a ton. It also takes me
Mhm.
away from some other stuff that's kind of important to me. My book's going to get done. It'll get done this coming 2025. Pretty much have it worked out at this point. Um, Books are lost leaders. I mean, books give you credibility when you speak. Mine's a, my first book deal I ended up getting out of because they wanted me to write a book that I didn't want to write. And I didn't have control because once you sign with a publisher, they kind of can tell you what to write.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially if
Yeah.
they give you money up front, they really can tell you what to do. And so I was just having a little bit of headbutting. I just didn't want to write a book about running and recovery and fitness, and that's I got picked up by a company that owned running and fitness magazines, and they had a publishing arm. So I was in that situation where I was gonna be writing a book that I struggled to write, and then I kind of said I'm done with that.
Yeah, there's a lot more to your story than just that aspect of it.
But now, again, I'm looking at some options where I'll control my own intellectual property on it. I can control, it's like a hybrid version, so they'll publish out into all the big, you can pick it up at your Barnes and Nobles and Amazons and all the other independent bookstores out there. But I also control my intellectual property. I can redo whatever I want without, them telling me I can't.
Okay.
And so that seems more feasible for me. And again, just it's there for people who want to read it. But more importantly, I can do it online now. Like I can literally coach online. I can do 6 to 8. Like I never want to do more than 12 a year, like big conferences. It's just I
More
want,
travel than what you need.
yeah, and I just want to help. I want to be there to help people, but I just don't want to be a road warrior.
Yeah. Not at the expense of the rest of your life and the things
Well,
that you
Yeah.
value.
I was just about to say, like, your core values,
Yeah,
traveling more than that could
yeah,
upset that.
and again, doing online coaching today. I use it online coaching. I use it online therapy. Like it like that's like, therapy's new to me. Like you know this, but I haven't been. I've been to therapy less than a year after a car accident. I didn't deal with any of it. Like I just was so driven and focused that the idea that there might be some trauma hanging back there from it, whatever. I'm just going to ignore it. I had to get off narcotics, like going to rehab. I had to go through a bunch of interesting uh, things from biofeedback to acupuncture stuff that insurance didn't really want to pay for in order to manage the pain. And all those skill sets that I developed to manage pain also taught me to block out things besides pain, which is functional in some levels, but also probably not good. So I'm on a new journey, like it literally to understand the mental side of a lot of it that I struggled to help other people with because I didn't value it enough personally. To me, I was one of those pull your bootstraps up, just keep pushing through things kind of person. It's probably why I am that way in the gym.
Kind of
Or
like that be a man about it mentality a little bit.
yeah, and or just like what I don't have a problem with other people who get emotional about stuff. I just was in a point where if I let those emotions take over, I'm not getting out of the hospital bed. I'm not getting up in the morning. Like there was literally nobody asked me, including my wife, to get my kids up in the morning and get breakfast made. Like nobody was asking anything. Everyone's like, you've been through enough. No one's going to ask me to do anything more, right? I could have chosen to go on, disability and lifetime. Like no one's going to, like I have a handicap license plate I don't use because I need to get the steps in. But like I got a lifetime handicap. I could have just collected Social Security and not worked and said, but that's just not me. Like I just needed to push myself harder and harder. But at the same time, that mentality also can cause you to really glaze over stuff that's, maybe important to acknowledge or see in yourself. But, emotions are one of those things that I don't have a ton of. And it got me through those nights in the nursing home when I'm left all by myself and, by being able to not have those feelings. But at the same time, I'm sure on some level, there's some benefit that I could have experienced from being sad and depressed about what happened to me, or like people would tell me all the time, I can't believe how positive you are when I'm laying in a nursing home. I'm like, what do I do?
Yeah. What other
Say,
emotion is there?
or it helped you, because if you got in that victim mentality for too long.
Yeah, no, I mean, I said it has been a huge benefit to me, but now
Yeah.
but as I coach more and more people, I've, I've got that's some of it's just the way I've been wired. Some of it's just who I am before the car accident. I'm dramatically a different person since the car accident. Like even in my family, everyone refers to it before, like everything in our lives are before the car accident, after the car accident, like, because it was literally flipping a switch one
Yep.
day. So it's just like before and after, and so a lot of it is like my ability to push myself. Some of that is upbringing. Some of that is just natural athletic abilities, and so not everybody has all those same things, and some people need their emotions to get through. I just have had to become more aware of my own in order to be more aware of others and not write them off. Even my own kids, like I needed to understand that I mean they were 8 and 4. We this my son doesn't really know life that didn't consist about he was 4 years old. So his memories before are probably more what he's heard lots of other people say
Yeah.
Right.
than they are his own memories. And he doesn't remember a time that I didn't have surgeries.
Right.
You know what I mean? Our daughter, she was 10. She's a little different. She to this day doesn't like seeing car accident. Inside of her, like it brings back a memory of something that was not good for her. And you know, I wasn't as aware. I wasn't as tuned to those types of things. I was more attuned to like we're just going to keep pushing forward. I think status quo is the hardest thing in the world to maintain. Like it is so hard. I mean, I've had numerous setbacks, even taking care of myself of my weight training and everything. I tore my bicep, and that really depressed me pretty bad for almost a year. I couldn't work out and do anything, and that just got me out of shape. And then, as you know, starting back anything's hard to do.
Yeah, and especially when you experience so many setbacks like that, at some point you had to start at least having that voice in the back of your head going like, "Is it even worth it?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it happens again. And I know Brandon, you coach a lot of people. People can't do something till they're ready to do something. I learned that
Oh, for
through the whole
sure.
thing. Like you can look and write out a plan and do all the proper planning. And I'm a big planner, and I'm a big person. I'm a scorekeeper. I mean, one of the things that I'm learning a lot from going through this brand building stuff that we've done together is that I keep score. Tanya now realizes I keep score. Like I'm a scorekeeper. If you're not keeping score, how do you know if you're winning?
Right. Yeah. How do you know if you're growing or
Yeah,
improving?
yeah. But I think a lot of people want to like have this plan, and you can sit down with them and show them how to be, you know, a great realtor and build a business, and that plan's good, right? The
It's
plan's great.
solid.
Yeah, the execution is where all the magic happens, right? It's why I'll give away anything I do on my real estate team. I'll give away anything I do for my training. I'm not. I'm never concerned that there's somebody. I'll give away all my public speaking stuff and all the things that we've been developing to coach and help people because
Because rarely do people actually implement.
yeah, it's really about the execution. You know, it's not about it's the plans are good. But it's like having a great recipe, right? A great recipe. Can I make a great pie? Yeah. If it's not a great pie, it's because you didn't put the right ingredients and you didn't follow the plan.
Right.
And because you
The recipe is worthless without the action of
yeah,
doing it.
and having the right pieces, the quality to do it. So, you know, a lot of it at this point is like I needed to be in that space, and when I wasn't in that space, for whatever it was, I've learned that I can know it's the most important thing in the world to me, and it feels important, and I know it makes a difference in my health, or it makes a difference in my family's wealth, or it makes a difference in my mental well-being. But if I'm not in a place, I know I can try and I'll quit. You know,
Yeah.
so this whole status quo thing is really, really difficult in business. It's difficult in life. It's difficult in marriages. It's difficult in raising, like, you think, oh, this is perfect. I want to stay here. Well, it's so hard to stay there.
Yeah.
So like, that's why I, back up the 215 and, because I just keep pushing myself harder in the gym. My wife's like, so at what point you want your arms to get any bigger? They're already really big. I'm like, oh, I can't skip arm day because then I can't do back and I can't do chest. Like,
Yeah,
like, I'm like,
it's
just-
not
it is
about
what
the
it is.
size of
Yeah,
the arm. It's
yeah,
about
yeah.
the carrot that I continues. Like, you have to have that carrot dangling in front of you, or
Like,
else
we just gotta
why?
keep
What
getting
do you
better.
move
or,
forward
or you go backwards.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all doing it. We all slip at some point. Like, I've slipped many times, and and I'm not going to start moving forward again until I really want to move forward. Like, I can, smoking is a perfect example. We all know it's not good. You're not going to quit till you are ready to quit.
That's right.
Doesn't matter what people tell you, what tricks you think you're gonna. I can do this or do that. Like, there's no shortcut. The shortcut is between your ears.
Right.
Amen
Exactly.
to that.
And if you're not in the mindset to lose the weight, overcome the setback, I talk a lot about overcoming setbacks now, and how to come. A lot of the people I want to work with are 40, 50-year-olds who want to regain something that they had and they've lost it, whether they lost it in an instant like I did, or whether they slip over time. But I can give you all the best plans in the world, and I can talk to you every single day. And, there's a reason there's a whole bunch of coaches and a whole bunch of trainers. There's fitness trainers and lots of life and motivational and business coaches. They all have really good plans. It's just the ones who make a difference in a person or a company get that person when they're ready to make a difference.
Yeah. Get them in the right mindset at the right time.
You're just catching them on the right time where they're like, that all makes sense to me, and I'm ready to do the hard work. And until you're ready to do that, you can read all the books in the world or listen to all the motivational people online that you can find, and it'll all make sense, but it won't make you get up in the next morning and go. Like, when I was paralyzed and hardly able to walk, and I was back home, and making breakfast for the kids was the one thing that got me down that steps every morning. And when I started back at the gym, I would sleep in my gym clothes for like the first 2 years. When it's time to go to bed and put on pajamas tonight, I'd put on my t-shirt and a pair of gym shorts.
Yeah.
Because that was one less thing that would stand in the way of me. Like, I always tell
It's
everybody.
a great mentality.
Yeah.
It's a great habit.
I would tell everybody all the time, like, the only difference between, again, 15 minutes drive from my house to the Y, all I have to do is get in the car. Even if I'm at the office, when I was just to go to the Y from, like, I'm a morning guy now. I have to get it out of the way in the morning, of very few exceptions where I have to go in the evening. But when I was working in Carlisle, our office was right next to the Y. I would go at lunchtime, or I'd go at 3 in the afternoon. And I would always say, like, if I could just get in the car and start driving towards the YMCA, then I'll get my workout in. The
just gotta
hardest
get-
part is getting my butt off the chair in my
Yeah.
office into my butt on the car, and then I'm good.
Then you're already like, I've made it this far. Might as
that,
well.
Might as
that was
well
my
go.
hurdle. That was my hurdle.
Yep.
Get out of bed, and again, being dressed in my clothes kind of helped. Or again, getting myself off of the desk, because again, I could, especially when I'm at work, I could just do another hour of work, go.
Because you're already sitting there.
Yeah, I'm already there. So it's that it's that first
Removing
step.
that hurdle to get there.
Yeah, it's,
So, to your coaching and speaking, if somebody wanted to hire you as a coach, I'm assuming you're probably taking limited clients for that. Or if somebody wanted to hire you for speaking, how would they do that?
so my website's getting revamped right now, but it's still there. It's johnulsh.com. If you go to johnulshteam.com, you'll get my real estate company. It used to be called A Perfect Run. That was the book name they wanted me to use.
Okay.
But that also still works. And you can go there and you can still make a request. We're working very hard right now to revamp the coaching to be a more tiered system, so that if you just want some motivational videos, that you can get that. If you want to be part of a group that gets access to that, and then, you know, once or twice a month, you have access to a group of 12 of us on Zoom. You know, 11 other people like you and me. That's going to be there, and then we'll have a one-on-one Zoom coaching that'll also give you access to, you know, 6 public speaking events that we'll probably have designated at a certain location. That'll be nice.
Okay.
A place that's nice to visit, that you or your spouse or you and your family can come visit if you want. And we'll get a day together. So that's all kind of being put in place. You know, it's like a 3-headed monster right now between the public speaking, getting the book done, and getting these programs established. The programs are what's most interesting to me. The book's been there. If somebody tells me I have to completely rewrite this book, I might not do it.
You're like, no, you're publishing it as is.
Yeah. I got a second
No,
book.
see,
I got a second book in me.
disagree with that. What you just said.
What's that?
That's just one more setback, and you are the king of dealing with setbacks
I know.
and still doing the thing.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll self-publish at that point. There'll be 100 stacks of those sitting in Brittany's office, telling her to give them out to everybody she comes in. She'll be up there with her Gary Keller ones.
Yeah.
But then the speaking, I still love it. It's just I don't want to put myself out there where I'm committing the too much speaking arrangements. There's stuff I'm always going to say yes to. If Lifeline reaches out to me like they have numerous times, said, you know, we need you to come speak. I mean, one time they shut down Lifeline for 2 hours so that they could bring the entire Lifeline staff, which is like a 3 or 4-headed monster. You just think it's the pilots and the people there, it's the people on the ground, it's the people who do the logistics. It's a team, and they shut down everything and had me come in. I don't think they cared. I mean, they were struggling to have a little bit of a loss of identity because they were so good in their segments of what they did, but never really put in the whole picture together. I was there to say, look, I'm not here if it isn't for what you guys do. What you do saved my life. Like, legitimately, that helicopter's not in Carlisle, I'm dead. Legitimately, if you don't execute at the level that you guys execute at, from the people back in the hangar repairing stuff, to the pilots, to the EMTs that are on the helicopter, to the people who are going to take me when I land, to the people who made sure that the schedules were done. Like, I'm not here.
Yeah, every
And-
second counted for you
And,
that day.
yeah, that day, and they operated efficiently and did their jobs, and as a team. And so I was there for an hour and a half in front of their entire program, which was like probably 80 people, 100 people in a conference room at the hospital. Just to explain how important their job is. Like, that kind of stuff, I'll never say no to that, ever. Like, you need me to do that somewhere. I mean, that kind of stuff, you know, has value to me because it literally saved my life.
Yeah, it's where you came from.
Yeah, it's how you give back to that industry.
Yeah. If somebody's going through something hard and they reach out to me, or their family reaches out to me, I'm never gonna say no to that either. I mean, it's never been about, you know, trying to monetize it as much as it's just been, you know, where can I make the biggest difference? What do people want? Is it something that I can give them and they can just read about it? Is it something that you know, that they need to be there with me? And then it became like, really, what are the lessons what are the big takeaways that I had? What are the pillars of what I have to give? And you know, it's all experience-based stuff, right? So it's not like there isn't anything that I don't even talk about that probably someone else hasn't talked about. There isn't probably a quote attributed to me that probably wasn't quoted by someone else at some point. Like, you know, but at the same time, it literally is just me talking and helping people, because this is what happened to me. You know, and the more people I help, the more I understand, like, one way I did it isn't necessarily the way everyone has to do it, and two, that at the end of the day, it's really about the process. Like, so many people get hung up on the outcome, And I can tell you, I don't know anybody who's super successful at anything they do who didn't fall in love with the process.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Every time I've ever achieved a goal, including the first time I ran, I was super depressed. Because the next day, like I ran on Thanksgiving Day, right? The next day I was like, what am I going to do? That's where I ended up in the gym. Then I started doing Spartan races. I had like, every time I achieved something, I was so depressed because I couldn't go do that thing again tomorrow.
You needed to find a new dragon to
Yeah,
slay.
exactly. I just ran, so I always tell people all the time, if you don't fall in love with the process at some point, the chances of this being a real life change for you is probably not going to stick.
Yeah.
It's reality. I mean, it's like people want to lose weight. They meet their weight goal, and so many people end up putting their weight back on. It's probably because it felt like torture. It felt like they were depriving themselves instead of giving themselves something. And in the end, they were super happy they didn't have to do it anymore.
So is that your goal with the coaching, is just to help them learn how to enjoy the process?
At the end of the day, that's one of my main, important things. Like, again, identifying is huge, right? So identifying what it is that's the issue, right?
Yep.
We'll get to the base of it. Do the hard things. Say the things that you don't want to say in front of other people, which I've been there. Like, my ego's huge sometimes, and I don't want to say things that even to myself of acknowledging my own faults, and then coming up with a plan. I know if you feel the same way as me, like if you can't put it to paper, you can't do it, right? And then scoring it, right? Like you've got to have a way to tell if you're making progress. I'm not a big I still write all my workouts and I still write all my plans in journals. There's tons of great apps that can do all that stuff. It's just for me, I need to pick it up every so often and go look at a book from a year ago when I was working out. Because I'm not big into like every week. I weigh myself every day, but I don't even look. I weigh it, and then I'll go into my app and I'll just look, from the last 6 months, and then I can see,
You see the progress.
See progress. In this case, my progress is going this way now because I'm packing on some muscle, so I'm gaining weight, and that's hard to wrap your head around if you're, like I'm gaining weight. It's okay.
Yeah.
But like I'm also like you need to stop. Like every year in the anniversary of a car accident, it's a two-sided coin for us. For one family, somebody died. This guy was, early 20s, had a fiance, had a brand new baby. The kid's 17 years old now, right? Never had a time, and then he remembered his dad, right? It's a sad day for them and our family. We celebrate it, right? We all survived a car accident. Using anniversaries or special occasions to kind of, as your measuring gauge, to say, I'll look back where I was 6 months ago. Especially as I was recovering, it felt like I wasn't making any progress at all. So I needed to stop trying to judge myself on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis and really say, okay, once a quarter, I kind of look at my progress. But again, if I wasn't keeping score, I had nothing to look at, right? And then there's a lot of revamping, right? There's a lot of like saying, okay, I'm going to make some changes. And when you make changes, you have to recommit. Like the commitment has to come again, because now you've just made some new changes, and like, do I still believe in these changes, or am I recommitting to what I'm doing? And then, like I said, this whole concept of falling in love with the process is really key. I mean, because it's really hard to make change. Change is hard. Like we'll always want to go back to that level that we were most easy, right? And when you really love the process, you really like the grind of it, and it doesn't feel like you look forward to it happening again tomorrow, or I wish I could do it again today, but I already did it. Then that's change, and now the process becomes the beautiful thing, and the goal becomes really secondary. And then it's like now you have to find out new ways to tweak it because the status quo is hard to maintain. So now you're like, how do I play the game a little different? How do I grow my margin higher? How do I pack on some more muscle? How do I increase how do I add another element? Maybe I want to, maybe I now want to start to work on my mental health. I've dealt with my physical health problems. I've got myself a lot more healthy now. I'm going, what's the next thing I can fall in love with?
I love that.
Yeah. Well, John, thank you for sharing your story, man. I'm proud to be a part of it. I cannot wait to read the final product, the book. And I need you to put it on audio for me.
I can give you the summary version.
Secret out that Brittany does own a original manuscript.
Yes, and it's autographed.
And she also has been very, very busy. So that's the only reason I'm going to assume that she hasn't told you how much she loves her book. And that I don't have to go rewrite the entire thing.
No, you're good.
Because if I do, ChatGPT is going to write it.
Everything after, I was like, once Women's Mastermind was done yesterday, I'm like, okay, now I can breathe. I can pick up a new book. I can pick up new projects. But I was living and breathing that mastermind event yesterday.
And now Brittany's going to start reading
So
your book out loud to me.
Yeah.
You will get my honest review via Facebook, like everybody else.
Nice. Oh, great. No, don't forget, it's a secret page because you have to say about the only secret copy.
Yes, the only secret copy, and you can't have mine.
You're probably like one of only like 4 people probably have. My parents haven't seen it. Don't my parents hear this. Cut that part out.
Yes, edit.
I'm going to leak it online.
1341.
Good. That's the only way to go viral is
Right.
make it like it's illegal that you leaked it. That will be good.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you, John. Glad
you
to
for
be a
having
part of
me.
this, and I can't wait to see whatever what's in store for you with speaking, the book. Like, I think you have a super bright future ahead of you, and just glad to be a part of it.
It's good to have to fall in love with the process.